Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about What If Naruto Son of Izanami DxD Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Rias Gremory prided herself on many things within her admittedly short life. She was born to the Gremory family, one of the last remaining pillars that made up Devil's society. The Gremory family was known for their kindness towards each other and their peerage. That brought up another thing she was proud of: her peerage. Ever since she had acquired her first piece, her queen, it had been slowly growing. She managed to gain a knight with a very powerful sacred gear, a rook who was a former Nekasha, and a damper who had the power over time. Yes, she took a large amount of pride in her peerage members and her ability to connect with each of them. The relationships between herself and them were extremely close, with each of them pledging their loyalty to her at some point in their lives. It was because of this closeness that Rias felt that she knew each of her members' emotions rather well. Though recently, something or rather someone had been testing that closeness. Kaneko Tuja was someone who rarely expressed her emotions. Due to her past and the trouble she had gone through in her life, she had become somewhat reclusive and rather callous towards others. It was only with her closest friends that the young girl dared to express even the tiniest amount of emotion, and when she did, it was usual in the form of a snarky remark spoken with a dull tone. But recently, that habit seemed to be getting even worse. The girl would spend shorter amounts of time in the club room where Rias's peerage would meet. When she would show up, she wouldn't even accept any treats offered by Akino, Rias's queen. She would just sit on the couch and stare off into space with an emotionless expression on her face. At first Rias had simply played it off as Kaneko simply being Kaneko, but that thought was slowly wiped from her mind after several weeks of this behavior. She had originally held off on sending her familiar to shadow the girl. She had felt that it may have been an invasion of Kaneko's privacy, but now, the resolve that had once fueled that decision was quickly fading. Rias released a sigh while running a hand through her scarlet hair. By her side stood at attention was her buxom dark-haired queen. The girl was sending worried glances down at her king as the redhead sat in the rays of the afternoon sun. This has been going on for several weeks, Rias-chan. She hasn't laid a finger on a single sweet I've tried to give her. This has been going on for far too long. I think it's time we get to the bottom of this. Akino spoke with clear amount of worry in her voice. Rias sighed to herself once again as she let her best friend's words sink in. She knew that Akino was right, but she was still against the idea of spying on one of her peerage members. It was breach of privacy that she was sure would anger her rook if she ever found out. But her growing concern for the girl was outweighing Rias's worry of angering her. You're right. Rias huffed before placing her hands on the table in front of her. Slowly a crimson, circular symbol appeared on the surface of the desk. The symbol began to glow an eerie red before a flash of light emitted from it, forcing Rias and Akino to look away. When they finally able to open their eyes, they turned and saw the creature Rias had summoned. The best way to describe the creature was as a miniature bat. Its face was very human-like as its small wings kept it afloat. Its eyes locked with Rias's before it suddenly took off towards the girl. The red-headed girl had a gentle smile on her face as the small bat perched itself on her shoulder and began to gently rub its head against her cheek. This creature was a familiar that she acquired during her first visit to the Summons Forest. The nocturnal animal had stayed by her side for years and would constantly find new ways to make itself handy. Like spying on Kaneko. Do you remember Kaneko? The small bat creature flew off its master's shoulder and gave a small nod. Good, I want you to follow her around. See what she is up to. Stay hidden from her and do not let her know you're following her. The creature gave a mock salute for dashing its way out of the open window, leaving Rias alone with Akino. I can't help but be anxious for the results. Rias merely nodded while her eyes continued to stare out the window. The sun was shining down from its position in the sky. The rays of sunlight illuminated the streets as citizens casually went about their days. Cars zoomed up and down the roads as shop owners happily greeted and spoke with their customers. It was on this particular summer day that we found Kaneko Tuja making her way through the busy streets. Kaneko was a small, petite girl that looked to be around the age of 15. She had snow-white hair and hazel eyes. She was currently wearing a white long-sleeved button-down shirt with vertical linings, a black ribbon on the collar, a black shoulder cape and matching button-down corset with a magenta skirt that had white accents. Her small and cute form caught the attention of many pedestrians who sought to get her attention, but they were all ignored. Kaneko continued to make her way through the streets, making a turn every once in a while before eventually stopping in front of a shop. The store's display window was adorned with different pictures of various sweets and other treats. Kanji surrounded these pictures, boasting about their quality and authenticity. Above the windows sat a medium-sized sign that read Uzumaki Sweets. Kaneko pushed open the doors of the shop, making a small bell ring loudly through its interior. Several occupants threw glances towards her before returning their attention back towards their desserts. The girl ignored these looks as she strode her way up to the front of the store where a white counter was located. She stood still for several seconds before ringing the bell. It only took several seconds for her to get response. Someone gently shouted out, "I'm coming," from the back room of the shop before going silence. Kaneko continued to stand at the counter for several more seconds before the owner of the voice was revealed. The boy was young, at least when you considered the fact he was running the store all by himself. He looked to be around 17 years of age. He had golden blonde hair that went well with his tan skin. He was rather tall, standing at a respectable 6 foot, and had a lean figure. His light blue eyes lit up when they met Kaneko's hazel ones. He was currently wearing a black apron that seemed to be covered in a mixture of sugar and flour. Underneath he wore a very simple orange button-down shirt and a pair of khakis. "Hey Ko-chan," the boy said as he approached the counter. For the first time since the beginning of her day, the hazel-eyed girl smiled as she leaned over the counter. The male bent over the counter as well and their lips met in the center. The two stayed in this position for several seconds, fully enjoying the lip lock before eventually pulling away. Kaneko had a small blush on her face as she stared at the bashful blonde in front of her. This man was Naruto Uzumaki and her first ever boyfriend. At the thought of this, Kaneko blushed even more as the concept of having a boyfriend was still very new to her. The two had only begun dating 1 month, 3 weeks, 5 days, 8 hours, 44 minutes and 13 seconds. She had kept track. You see, the meeting between the unlikely couple had happened completely by chance. Akino and Rias had been particularly busy one day, leaving the young girl on her own to satisfy her need for sweets. She had traveled to her usual sweet shop only to find out that the owner had suddenly passed away. This had left the girl rather sad and without anything to munch on, forming a dejected aura around her as she trudged aimlessly around the city. She would have continued on until one of her fellow peerage member had found her if it hadn't been for the blonde standing in front of her. Naruto had been standing in front of his newly opened shop and was advertising it. When he saw the dejecting girl, he had immediately stopped her and offered a small sample of a simple vanilla cream wonton. The girl had immediately been mesmerized by the small treat before grabbing it at an inhuman speed and stuffing it in her mouth. She chewed it for several seconds before freezing. The young man had been initially scared that he had done something wrong as the girl remained unresponsive for several long seconds. His worry was quickly alleviated when the girl immediately dashed into his shop and sat at one of the chairs placed at the counter. She had a menu in her hand and was looking over it intensively, leaving Naruto to stand in shock in the middle of the street. When he finally managed to get behind the counter, the girl had already begun listing off several items that she wanted. Naruto could only chuckle at the enthusiasm behind his first real customer before beginning to work on her order. At first their relationship had been strictly as customer and cook, albeit slightly more relaxed. The blonde-haired man had a charismatic air to him that made even the usual stoic Kaneko break down and share a conversation with him. After several weeks, the boy had gradually broken down the barrier between the two and transcended their relationship into a more friendly one. The girl would come to the shop to simply talk about her day and exchange casual conversations with Naruto, while also enjoying his delicious sweets. Naruto would be happy to oblige her with treats and a chat while also giving her large discounts. This pattern had continued for several more weeks before eventually the blonde-haired boy had asked the girl out. The request had taken the Nekashu by surprise and had honestly left her stunned. Naruto had apparently taken this as a no and immediately apologized to the girl. The depressed tone the boy had snapped the cat-like girl from her shock-induced trance before she grabbed the boy, unconsciously forcing some of her devil strength into her arm, and pulled him closer to her. She hesitated once again before offering up a meek yes and placing a small kiss on his cheek. From that point on, the relationship between the two had been growing exponentially. Kaneko could be consistently seen at the store, sharing a conversation with her boyfriend. The girl was content with sitting in his lap and having him feed her treats during some of the less busier moments of the day. His gentle hand combined with the natural warmth he exuded had immediately convinced the girl to make her boyfriend pet her. Naruto had no problem in indulging the cute girl and now could usually be seen stroking the girl's head or back. Their relationship had been going amazingly except for one small issue. That issue being the fact that she was a devil. The girl had always felt a certain amount of guilt whenever her partner shared a part of his day with her, and she couldn't be completely truthful with him. Sometimes she was summoned in the middle of their conversations, forcing her to leave without any warning at all. When she would return, she would once again have to lie and embellish her activities. The blonde-haired boy would always accept the girl's excuses, which only caused her to feel an even larger amount of guilt. She knew if the relationship continued to an even higher level that she would be forced to reveal her nature, but for now she would allow the issue to rest. "How has your day off been, Ko-chan?" Naruto asked, snapping the girl out of her small thoughts. Her eyes met his before she offered a small shrug and jumped up on the counter. Naruto rolled his eyes at the girl's behavior, while a small smile played across his lips. He placed his hands on either side of the girl's waist before dragging her over the counter and setting her on his lap as he sat down on a stool. The girl let out a small huff that immediately turned into a purr as Naruto's hand found their way to her scalp. The girl's purr was silenced when a stick of dango was placed in front of her lips. The white-haired girl opened her mouth and allowed her boyfriend to feed her the snack. Her voice turned into an appreciative moan as she enjoyed the combination of her boyfriend's baking and petting. If anyone from her school had seen her like this, they would be absolutely shocked at the amount of emotions the stoic girl was showing. "Hey Nico-chan?" Naruto asked, once again snapping the girl out of her train of thought. She briefly turned her head only to feel the blonde-haired boy's lips against her own. Her eyes widened in shock at the sudden contact before she relented to the kiss. The two held that position for several seconds before Naruto pulled back, leaving Kaneko with a heavy blush. The girl's eyes locked with his, surprise filling her at the amount of emotion present within his eyes. "I love you," Naruto stated, once again surprising the girl. This had been the first time either of them had ever gone as far to say the L word to each other. As a teenager, that would be surprising to most, but both had agreed they would rather not rush the relationship. Over the course of the relationship, their feelings for each other had been growing immensely, but neither had ever taken it this far. Though once she saw the emotions behind her boyfriend's eyes, a reaction was set off within herself. "I love you too, Naruto," the girl stated, causing a large grin to sprout up on his face. The girl was brought into a massive hug as Naruto wrapped his arms around her. Kaneko rolled her eyes at the boy's reaction, but still had a small smile on her face. In the end, she chose to just snuggle into the embrace and enjoy this special moment with her boyfriend. "Are you absolutely sure of what you saw?" Rias asked as her summon flew in front of her. The creature was once again in its bat form as it reported its findings to Rias. The bat gave a small nod, making Rias lean back in her seat with a heavy expression set upon her usually beautiful face. "You are dismissed," the redhead stated, causing the summon to disappear in a small puff of smoke. Akino stood by her king's side with a shocked look adorning her beautiful face. The two sat like that for several moments before Akino finally spoke up. If this is true, then that means Akino trailed off, as the idea became so absurd that she couldn't even articulate it. Rias nodded, sharing the same amount of shock as her queen. "Yes. Our little Kaneko has a boyfriend." Naruto smiled to himself as he steadily ran a rag over the counter of his shop. The last customer had long since left, leaving the teen all to himself. A small light directly above his head was the only one on in the shop, highlighting the boy in a mysterious light. To others, Naruto Uzumaki was simply the only employee working at the small sweets shop. But in reality, the boy held so much more. He was Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox, descendant of the Sage of Six Paths, reincarnation of Ajura Otsutsuki and future Hokage. Well, the last title was true until he found himself in this new world. A last-ditch effort by Kaguya had sent him blasting through space and time using her powers. Just as he had managed to seal her, the woman had activated the technique. The experience had been painful as his very existence was tested by the laws of space and time. It felt as if his body had been torn apart and put back together over a whole century before he finally regained any sense of awareness. When he awoke, he found himself located in a desert that seemed to stretch on for miles. Exhausted, injured and dehydrated, he was forced to trudge his way through the miles of golden sand. It has taken him several days to reach any type of civilization. His first contact was with a small town that seemed to be centered around an oasis. The citizens had been rather put off at the sight of a basically naked, blonde-haired, bleeding man limping his way into the town. Luckily, some of the town members decided to show him a bit of mercy and patched him up. Unfortunately, they spoke a completely different language than his own, forcing him to eventually leave. From there, he spent the better part of several months exploring the world. The world he found himself in was entirely different from his own. The absence of chakra within humans was the first big shock. Chakra was basically non-existent in the world. Pure nature chakra was even harder to find as the pollution being spewed out by the humans clouded the world. The second big shock was the advancement in technology. Back in his world, trains and chakra armor were some of the most advanced technology he had laid his eyes on. In this world, a train was considered obsolete compared to the flying machines that sped across the sky faster than the speed of sound. Eventually, after much traveling, Naruto had decided to settle down in Japan. The people here spoke the same language as him, and the culture was rather accepting of some ridiculous things. He figured he would be able to easily fit in despite his lack of knowledge. The first thing he had done was make his way to a library. After creating some clean clothes for himself using the henge technique, he had snuck his way into the bathroom of the library and created several clones. Naruto and his clone crew then spent the rest of the day going through the vast number of books, absorbing some basic information that would better help him blend into this society. The first obstacle he ran into was the fact that he did not exist. According to the government, he had no social security number, no passport, no license, absolutely nothing. His first task was to remediate it. This had taken a lot of infiltration, document manipulation, and even a tiny bit of genjutsu usage. That last one had taken a very long amount of time due to his utter lack of any knowledge regarding the art. Though in the end, he managed to cast one that made it slightly easier to influence others to go along with his will. An amateur technique that any beginning genin could have learned in a matter of days, but to Naruto, it had taken weeks and proved to be a giant success. So according to the government, he was Naruto Uzumaki, orphaned since birth with no family ties whatsoever. He spent the first 16 years of his life in an orphanage in Tokyo before eventually finding himself a job. After scraping together enough money, the young man purchased a small property that, with a combination of henge clones, he managed to turn into a respectable shop that sold sweets of all kind. Of course, he had originally wanted it to be ramen-themed in remembrance of all the good times he had at Ichiraku's, but decided against it once he realized that no matter what he did, his ramen would always pale in comparison to the legendary noodles. Also, he had been surviving off of cheap sweets since his arrival in this world, so might as well start making his own. After making sure the shop was completely finished, he began to advertise. Due to his rather small budget, he was forced to stand in front of the store and hand out flyers. He had a clone in the back, making a small amount of treats that he would give out as samples. Meanwhile, he would stand outside, a plate full of treats in one hand and a handful of flyers in the other. It had all started off rather slow, but once a brave couple had stepped forward and tried a stick of dango, it all picked up. Steadily, a stream of customers slowly began to enter the shop. His clone began to serve the people outside while he attended to the others outside. By the end of the day, he had managed to make over 60,000 yen in profit. That night, he managed to sleep very well in the back room of his shop. Over the next several weeks, his shop had experienced a wide range of success. It had become a local hit around the neighborhood, and Naruto managed to even acquire some people he would even call regulars. Everything was going quite well for the blonde-haired boy. Things changed on the day he met Kaneko. He had once again been advertising his store when he felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time, a large source of chakra. His eyes had immediately locked on to the white-haired girl that had been dejectedly walking down the street towards him. Her emotions were visible to everyone as she trotted down the street. Though, unlike everyone else, Naruto could detect a small output of chakra coming from her. The girl immediately caught his interest, and he knew he had to know more about her. So he decided to offer her a sample. He did not expect for the girl to suddenly rush into his shop and set up camp in a seat. He also didn't expect the girl to keep coming back. Day after day, the young white-haired girl would continue to come back to his shop for me. At first, Naruto had just attempted to pry information from the girl. Their conversations were very sparse and short. Slowly that began to change. Naruto began to grow curious about more than just her chakra. He started to ask questions about her day, her mood, her feelings. At first, he was met the stoic attitude that she showed everyone. Not one to be put off by such behavior, Naruto continued to poke and prod at her cold exterior. Slowly, ever so slowly, he managed to worm his way past the girl's exterior and find a place in her heart. Her cold answers became sarcastic quips and her blank stares began to show the smallest amounts of interest. As the weeks went by, the girl began to open up more and more to him as he did the same. Finding out how she had chakra was far from Naruto's mind by the time he could truly consider the girl a close friend. The feeling of friendship soon developed into something more as they became more and more open with each other. Too often he would find himself getting lost in her hazel eyes. He noticed that his stares would last a bit longer whenever he got the chance to look at her rear or budding breasts. Panic had quickly began to rise in him when he noticed his feelings for her. That panic was soon relieved, however, when he began to see some changes in Kaneko. She began to demand that she sit him on his lap while eating her treats. Her excuse was that he gave off a certain warmth that she found very comforting due to the harsh winter they were going through at that point of the year. He could feel her gaze locked on his back whenever he was preparing desserts for other customers. She would become defensive whenever any female customers showed the slightest signs of attraction towards him. Due to dealing with his own feelings and emotions, he was able to figure out that Kaneko was attracted to him. It was surprising at first to think that her feelings for him stretched any further past friendship, but he soon came to realize that Kaneko's behavior towards him went past the realm of just friends. In the end, Naruto had decided to act on these feelings and asked the girl out. And to his pleasant surprise, she had accepted. Ever since then, the two had been happily together. The relationship between them hadn't changed much except they were much more open about their feelings for each other. Kaneko no longer needed an excuse to sit on his lap while hugging, and small kisses had become the normal greeting between the two. It was honestly some of the best time the blonde-haired boy had had in his rather short life. Naruto's train of thought was abruptly cut off when he heard the door to his shop open suddenly. He looked up and was immediately frozen in place by what he saw. Standing near the entrance were two beautiful young women. Both were dressed similarly, wearing an outfit that seemed similar to what a schoolgirl would wear. The one in front had crimson hair that fell down the length of her back. Her eyes were narrowed as her gaze locked onto his form. The woman behind her was what some would describe to be the ideal Japanese woman. Her long black hair, angular face and slender form would have attracted the gaze of any hot-blooded male. Fortunately for her, Naruto was a faithful man and kept his eyes firmly locked at eye level. "I'm sorry ladies, but we are closed for the night. You're free to come back tomorrow when we're open." The redhead's eyes narrowed even further at the boy's innocent behavior. She began to slowly make her way towards the counter while her black-haired companion followed close behind. Naruto remained completely still, a small smile still on his face as the irate girl marched her way towards him. "What is your relationship with Kaneko Tuju?" the girl asked while slamming her hands down on the counter. Naruto caught a brief spike of energy coming from the girl before Akino placed her hand on Ria's shoulder. The energy immediately died down, but it still lasted long enough to catch Naruto's interest. Whatever that energy was, It felt powerful yet felt nothing like chakra. Oh, you gals know Ko-chan? She hasn't mentioned anything about you guys, I think. Naruto had to hold in a snicker, as he literally saw the girl grow angrier in front of him. Kaneko had actually spoke about her upperclassmate who would look out for her and take care of her during school. He could only assume that this girl was the same one she spoke about. Answer my question. Rias managed to spit out in between clenched teeth. Naruto's smile grew a bit larger as he turned his back to the two girls and began to clean his cooking station. Immediately, Rias's anger spiked again, and she had to be physically restrained by Akino from attacking the boy. Nico-chan is my girlfriend. We've been happily together for a couple of months at this point, Naruto calmly said while cleaning several of his utensils. He was greeted with silence for several seconds, causing him to turn around to see how the girls were reacting. He was caught by surprise when a hand full of glowing energy was thrust into his face. I'm sorry, but I can't allow this to continue. This relationship will only end in pain for the both of you, and as a king, it's my job to protect my peerage. Both Naruto and Akino were caught off guard by the tone the girl was using. Rias, don't you think this is too far? Shouldn't this be Kaneko's decision? Akino was immediately silenced when Rias held her hand up to her. The black-haired girl lowered her head and stepped back. She knew that her king had made her decision, and she could not change that. The girl was just that stubborn. Rias leveled her eyes to the surprisingly calm Naruto. The boy's eyes were locked onto her glowing hand as he continued to stand still. Your memories of Kaneko and this visit will be erased. You may be angry at me now, but things are far more complicated than they seem. I am only saving you the trouble, Rias stated while the purple glow of her hand grew brighter. Naruto could only grow more curious as he felt a force settle over him. If he had to compare it to something, it would be as if someone was attempting to cast a genjutsu on him. This only made him more curious as the two girls in front of him seemed to be able to wield this energy for offensive purposes. Plus the girl's mini-speech tipped him off that things weren't as simple as they looked. He would have a lot of questions for Kaneko when he saw her again. Goodbye, mortal, Rias said before placing her palm on Naruto's face. The glowing light in her palm latched onto Naruto's head, causing the boy to flinch. Rias stepped back as a bright purple light surrounded the blonde-haired boy's head. The light began to grow brighter and brighter before suddenly dissipating, catching both Rias and Akino by surprise. That was a rather interesting technique you have there. I would give it a C rank if it was a genjutsu. Though you're sort of out of luck. I'm used to dealing with annoying people and their illusions, Naruto stated as the last remnants of the purple light fell at his feet. While the girls' powers were impressive, they didn't stand a chance to a quick burst of his chakra. Who are you? What are you? Rias managed to spit out despite her shock. She didn't sense any demonic, angelic or magic energy from the boy. There was no way he should have been able to break through her hypnosis technique. My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I'm just a guy who works at a dessert shop. The better question is, who are you? Kaneko was furious. Angry or slighted didn't exactly do the trick when it came to expressing her current mood. She had never felt more agitated in her whole life. And all this anger was currently directed at her king, Rias Gremory. You did what? Kaneko growled out while staring at her king. The volume at which she spoke was rather uncharacteristic of her, especially since she was talking to the red-headed girl who was sitting calmly behind her desk, a fact that only served to piss Kaneko off even more. Akino was standing behind her queen, seemingly stuck on whether to find the scene to be amusing or actually be concerned about how angry her younger peer seemed to be at her friend. I visited your boyfriend. At the word boyfriend, Rias raised her hands and formed air quotes, an act that made Kaneko bristle with anger. You weren't acting like yourself, so I decided to get to the bottom of it. I had my familiar follow you and discovered that you were hiding this from us. What I want to know is, why didn't you tell us? Kaneko began to scowl at the girl's question before quickly taking in a deep, calming breath. Even though she was angry at her king for invading her privacy, Rias was still her king and friend. I didn't tell either of you because I didn't find it necessary. My relationship with Naruto is between him and myself. I didn't find the need to inform any of you because it wouldn't affect my duties as a devil or as a student. Kaneko attempted to say in her usual stoic voice, though it was obvious that a bit of anger had slipped into her speech. But it has been affecting your relationship with us. You could have told us, Kaneko-chan. Akino finally spoke up. The young Nekish's eyes cut towards the fallen angel turned devil. The sharpness of the look caused Akino to immediately shut her mouth. Kaneko huffed at the action before crossing her arms across her chest and looking directly at the two. I apologize if I have been acting differently as of recently, but that does not mean that I think it was right for you two to invade my privacy. You should have asked before taking such drastic measures like following me, Kaneko stated with a sense of finality in her voice. Rias's eyes met the young cat girl's eyes and the two began to have a heated stare-off. Akino watched from the sidelines as the two headstrong girls' wills crashed against each other. Few people were stubborn enough to actually keep up with Rias's stubborn streak, and Akino knew that Kaneko was one of those people. When the white-haired girl wanted something, she would dig it and not relent until she got that something. In Rias's mind, she was having a mini-monologue. She was surprised that the girl was showing this much resistance to the situation. When she had originally learned about Naruto, she had just figured that Kaneko had fallen to a trend that many girls her age went through. Getting a boyfriend and being a couple was something that was expected of girls her age. The two had apparently been going out for almost 2 months, so there still was a possibility that it could be just a phase. But the look in the girl's eyes told Rias that Kaneko did not believe so. This was the most passion she had ever seen the girl show since the two had met each other. It had almost made her flinch since she had never seen this type of fire in the girl's eyes. But even with that much passion, Rias was still very uncertain about the situation. To her, Kaneko was still the little girl that had been looking for any sense of comfort after her sister had left her all alone. As her king and her first friend, it was her job to make sure the girl would not get hurt. Whether that was physically or emotionally did not matter to the Gremry. Well, I still do not approve. He is over 2 years older than you and is a human. He looks to be a ruffian, and his attitude was way too pleasant when we spoke. Plus, he doesn't even attend a school. He's bound to turn out to be a delinquent if he already isn't one. Rias stated while closing her eyes, the issue being over in her mind. The temperature in the room almost seemed to drop as Kaneko's anger once again spiked to its highest levels. The girl was shaking in place, her hands clenched into tight fists, as he attempted to hold in her anger. Her hands were so tightly squeezed that blood was beginning to leak from underneath her fingernails. I do not care if you approve of my relationship. I know that Naruto is a good person and I will continue my relationship with him for however long I want. The girl said rather sharply before storming out of the club room, slamming the door on her way out. I think you may have gone a bit far, Rias. That was the angriest I have ever seen Kaneko-chan, Akino said while watching the girl stomp her way off the campus through the window located in the club room. Rias released a large sigh before slumping down in her chair and closing her eyes. Even with her queen saying otherwise, she had to believe she made the right decision. For her conscience's sake. Naruto was not really all that surprised when his girlfriend came charging into his store near noon the day after her friends had come into his store. The girl was obviously agitated as she didn't even offer him a verbal greeting. She just immediately jumped into his lap, grabbed his hand and placed it on her head. Reading her mood and knowing how his girlfriend acted, Naruto immediately began to massage her scalp. Very slowly, the tension in her shoulders began to fade away and she began to melt more into his embrace. It was a very comical sight to the people present in the shop as the older boy bent to the whim of the younger girl. The young couple's behavior was seen as adorable by the older customers in the shop. I'm guessing you found out about Rias and Akino visiting me? Naruto said after several minutes of silent petting. Kaneko froze for several seconds before offering him a small nod. Naruto let out a gentle hum while increasing the intensity of his petting. The girl began to fall deeper and deeper into the embrace, feeling a sense of warmth and comfort coming from the boy that she hadn't felt for years. Don't be too mad at them. They were only trying to be good friends and look out for you. Plus, you know it doesn't bother me. It's nice to finally see the people you hang out with when you're not around me. At this point Kaneko had her eyes closed and seemed to be just barely listening to the conversation. A cute pout appeared on her face before she pressed herself even harder against Naruto's chest. I don't want them around you, the girl said rather sleepily. It seemed the warmth coming from Naruto's body was putting her to sleep. He found it rather amusing and very cute that the girl was actually falling asleep after diving into his lap. Why not? At this, the girl flipped over so she was straddling the boy's waist. She dug her head deep into her chest while wrapping her arms around his body. Giant to pay. Makes me jealous, she mumbled before quickly succumbing to her urge to sleep. Naruto looked down at the girl for several seconds before shaking his head and picking her up. The girl's worrying was cute, but it was very unnecessary. What she didn't know was that in his home, he was surrounded by some of the biggest-breasted women he had ever seen in his life. Tsunade Senju, Hinata Hyuga, Mei Terumi, Ino Yamanaka, the list could go on. Even though he was a teenage boy, he had grown used to being around busted women. He would not neglect the girl because of her chest size. After all, how could anyone ignore the cutest devil in all of existence? Surzek's Lucifer could be considered the most powerful devil in existence at the moment. The man was the leader of the four great Satan. His talents included immense demonic power, mastery in hand-to-hand combat, the power of destruction at his beck and call, and the strongest queen in the underworld. Though, the pride he felt in all of these things were nothing compared to the pride he felt at being the big brother of Rias Gremry. Surzek's had a very large sister complex. While it was nothing perverted, it was very noticeable to everyone around the man. Whenever he would see his younger sibling, he would immediately try to embrace her in a hug. Whatever she asked of him, he would get it done immediately. There was almost nothing he wouldn't do for the girl just because she was his precious little sister. This was a fact that was known throughout the underworld. It was also a fact that was known by Rias Gremry. Emato? Is that really you? I'm so glad you have finally called your Anai-san. The strongest devil could be heard gushing over the handheld phone in his office. Standing by his side was one of the most beautiful and deadliest women alive. She had long silver hair and matching silver, wore a blue and white maid outfit with a matching headpiece, and currently, she was staring at her husband with a neutral look on her face. On the other end of the phone call, Rias had to hold in a sigh at the excitement her brother was showing. Don't get her wrong, She loved her brother, and was happy that the man loved her, but sometimes his behavior could get annoying. Though it was still endearing, just in a very annoying way. Yes, it's really me, Oni-sama. I called because I need a favor and I have no one else to turn to. Rias knew she shouldn't be playing on her brother's emotions like that, but she felt that it was necessary. The desperate statement was completely unnecessary, but she knew it would immediately catch her brother's attention. Surzex could almost feel his heart tearing at the fact that his Amuto seemed to be in a hard situation. He still carried a large amount of guilt for setting up the marriage between the girl and Riser Phoenix, and causing her so much grief in the first place. It was part of the reason why he attempted to do absolutely everything the girl requested of him. Whatever you need, your big brother will do it for you. At this, Rias smiled and Graphia let out a loud sigh. Sometimes it was just too easy to manipulate the strongest man in the underworld. Thank you and please come again, Naruto said with a polite smile on his face as he handed the bag of treats over to the young man in front of him. The boy, who looked to be his age or a year younger, had come charging into the school screaming about how he needed sweets for his new girlfriend. He had practically begged Naruto for recommendations because he did not know what to get for the girl. Naruto was happy to oblige the young man by picking out certain things that would be seen romantic. It was hard for him not to feel sympathy towards the boy since he, himself, was currently in a new relationship. No thank you. You have no idea how much this will help me. Hopefully, Yuma-chan will like this enough that she'll invite me to her house and I can see her boobs, the boy said with a rather perverted tone to his voice. Naruto let out an uncomfortable chuckle as the boy began to make groping motions with his hands in the air. He watched as the boy unconsciously grabbed the bag and walked out of the store while muttering perverse things to himself. Such a strange boy. Reminds me of Jiraiya, but apparently, he actually managed to get a girlfriend. But if he managed to find a girl that can deal with his perverted nature, good for him, Naruto said to himself while dusting his hands off. The blonde boy was about to make his way to the back room, but something made him stop in his motions. The most powerful energy he had felt since he had arrived in this world had just entered the shop. Naruto looked up and saw a man standing at the entrance of his shop. The red-headed man was dressed in a rather tight suit that was decorated with spiraling, red designs. He wore a white dress shirt underneath with suit along with a red tie. He had on a pair of black sunglasses that hid the fact he was scanning the interior of the shop. This is the most energy I've felt coming from someone since I've arrived here. It could rival some of the Kages. And he looks like a male version of that Rias girl. Now, I know that something interesting is definitely going on, Naruto asked while casually eyeing the man. The man stood at the entrance of store for several seconds before quickly striding his way towards the counter. Naruto pretended not to notice the man as he began to prepare several dango sticks. The man got to the counter and rang the bell. Naruto quickly turned to the man and flashed him a polite smile. Hello, sir? What can I do for you today? Naruto asked in his generic customer service voice. The shinobi was aware that snacks were probably the last thing that this man was looking for. Yes, I would like to talk to the owner of this establishment. I have some very important issues I would like to discuss with him, or her, the man stated while pushing the glasses back up the bridge of his nose. Naruto's smile grew even larger before he quickly stripped out of his apron and grabbed a clip-on tie to put on. I am the owner of this shop. Naruto Uzumaki at your service, Naruto said while offering his hand out to the man. The businesslike man stared at the hand before raising his own and engaging in a handshake with the boy. He was caught off guard when he was almost forced to his knees by the strength behind the teenage boy's grip. This was one of the tightest handshakes he had ever had in his life. Well, I am Surzex Lucifer and I'm here because I am interested in buying this shop of yours. When Rias had first laid out her plans to him, Surzex had been really confused. The girl had wanted him to pose as a businessman and buy the shop from the blonde-haired boy in front of him, who he learned was Kaniko's boyfriend. His little sister's logic was that Kaniko was just using the boy because he was offering her an unlimited amount of sweets. Once that supply of treats was taken away from her, Kaniko would realize that their relationship wasn't real and break up with the boy. If any other person had asked him to do something as ridiculous as this, he would have laughed in their face and told them how idiotic they were being. Unfortunately for him, Rias was his precious Imuto, and he could never deny her request. I'm sorry, but you seem to have wasted your visit. I have no intentions on selling this shop anytime soon. I am very well off with it. And Naruto was not lying when he said this. The amount of money that he was pulling in from the sales of the shop had left him with a very sizable amount of spending money. He no longer slept in the back room of the store, even though he kept a mattress back there for whenever Kaniko fell asleep. He now had a small apartment located only a block away from the shop. His bank account had slowly been growing ever since his first month of business. Well, I've traveled a very long distance, so I'm not going to leave before I even put an offer down on the table, Surzex said before reaching into his pocket and pulling out a check. He carefully slid the slip of paper over the desk and stepped back to watch the boy's reaction. Naruto reached down and picked up the paper. He let out an appreciative hum at the large amount of zeros present on the tiny slip of paper. It almost looked as if he was about to say yes to the deal right before he casually ripped up the little piece of paper. I'm sorry, but I still have to refuse. This shop isn't just the next paycheck to me. It holds a lot of sentimental value to me even though it hasn't been in existence for too long. I can't just give it up now, Naruto said while crossing his arms across his chest. Sirzex stared down at the ripped-up pieces of paper with an unreadable expression on his face. But internally, the red-headed man was freaking out. The check was supposed to be the killing blow to the boy. What teenage boy wouldn't want to be instantly rich? Apparently, this blonde-haired idiot didn't want to be, and if that was true, then he couldn't fulfill his promise to her. If he didn't fulfill his promise, it would mean that he disappointed his sister. Sirzex Lucifer did not like upsetting Rias. Wait. Sirzex spoke before letting a little bit of his power settle over Naruto as an attempt to influence him. The boy stiffened, making Sirzex believe that his power had worked. While he didn't like using his powers on humans, the one thing he couldn't afford to do was disappoint Rias. But he knew he would feel terrible if he just took everything away from the boy without giving him at least a fighting chance. How about we play for it? A simple game of poker. You win, you get the money and I walk out of the shop forever. You lose, I get the shop and I give you half the amount, Sirzex said. Naruto remained frozen for several seconds before slowly nodding his head. Sirzex grinned before reaching into his pocket and summoning a deck of cards. He walked back up to the counter before dealing the cards at a rapid pace. Naruto's eyes were locked on the steadily growing set of cards located on his half the counter. Sirzex glanced up from his shuffling to examine Naruto's eyes. The boy's eyes were slightly glazed over, causing the red-haired man to sigh. He had cast a sense-dulling spell on the poor. His senses were lowered along with his sense of judgment. He was basically seeing everything as if he was drunk. Let's get this game started, Sirzex said before flipping over the first card. The man was so confident in his own ability that he didn't even notice the small grin placed upon Naruto's lips. I am so sorry, Rias-chan. I tried my best, but he tricked me. He tricked me. Rias attempted to hold in a sigh as her older brother sobbed into her leg. Her brother had teleported in the clubroom only minutes ago and had immediately started to cry. At first, he was too hysterical to even talk, but eventually, Rias managed to coax some information out of him. Apparently, Sirzex had attempted to win the ownership of the shop via poker match. He had even cast a spell on Naruto in order to make sure the odds were in his favor. By the middle of the game, he realized just how wrong he had been. The boy had left him utterly defeated and a lot less rich. The man had immediately demanded a rematch, but Naruto had refused. In the end, Sirzex was forced to leave the shop completely empty-handed. It's fine, Oniai-sama. Just go home. I'm not mad at you, Rias said in a restrained voice while petting the head of her older brother. Even though he had failed in his mission, Rias couldn't be too mad. It was partly her fault for not including the fact that Naruto seemed to be immune to devil powers, though she expected for that immunity to crumble at her brother's hands. The man looked up at her, his face covered in tears and snot while his bottom lip quivered. Rias forced a smile, causing her brother to smile as well. He gave her a small smile before disappearing from the clubhouse. What will you do now, Rias? Akino spoke as she watched the unmoving form of her king. The red-headed girl let out a sigh before turning towards the door. For now, we leave them alone. We have more important things to attend to tonight, the girl stated while looking at the setting sun in the distance. Tonight was the night where she would gain another member of her peerage. Naruto was whistling idly to himself as he made his way from the bank to his house. After tricking Sirzex and taking a large amount of his money from him, Naruto had kicked the man out and went about the rest of his day. At the end of it, he closed up his shop and made his way to the bank with his rather sizable check. He had been waiting all day to deposit the cash and had decided that he would do it personally. Luckily, he had managed to make it to the bank just before it closed and deposited the large sum of money. The teller had almost had a heart attack at the amount being put in. She personally called the owner of the check, Mr. Lucifer as he liked to be called, to see if the check was actually stolen. The man had reluctantly admitted that the check was real and gave the woman the authority to process it. Naruto could hear the frustration in the man's voice through the short phone conversation, and it only served to make the occasion even better to him. Naruto's whistling slowly decreased in volume as he thought of items to add to the menu of his shop. He had recently been experimenting with making daifuku, which was a rice cake with a sweet filling. The rice cake portion was rather easy, but Naruto was attempting to add a twist to the traditional filling. He had clones working around the clock in order to discover the greatest combination of rice cake and sweets. Naruto's attention was taken away from his sweets when he noticed a very brief flicker of light appear in front of him before immediately disappearing. His eyes widened slightly when he saw a literal barrier sprout out from the ground and erect itself over a rather large piece of land. The energy coming from the barrier seemed rather familiar to the blonde. To the normal human eye, the barrier was most likely invisible, but to Naruto's trained eye, it was just sitting here in plain sight. Well, might as well step in. The boy placed his hands on the barrier and began to focus his chakra into it. The portion in front of him began to waver as Naruto's chakra invaded it. After several seconds, a small portion of the barrier shattered like glass, allowing Naruto free entry into the barricaded area. He stepped into confines of the red barrier, noticing that it seemed to only stretch around the park. He began to walk deeper and deeper into the park, attempting to find the origin of the barrier. After only a half a minute of walking, Naruto stumbled upon a very interesting sight. Laying in the center of a rather large field was a dead boy. This was the very same boy that had visited his shop only a couple of hours ago, asking for treats in a rather perverted fashion. The boy had to be dead, as there was a gaping hole in his stomach and the grass surrounding his corpse took on a crimson color. But that wasn't the most surprising part. What was most shocking was the fact that Rias, the same girl that had walked into his shop and interrogated him, was standing over the dead boy with several chess pieces in her hand and a bright red light surrounding her form. He saw the girl place the chess pieces on the boy's chest before stepping back and shouting a few words. The chess pieces on the boy's chest began to glow the same shade red before slowly sinking into his chest. Naruto's curiosity continued to grow as the boy's stomach magically began to knit itself back together as if it wasn't just torn apart a couple of seconds ago. His cheeks became flushed and his chest began to rise and fall, signify that the boy was once again breathing, a technique capable of bringing back the dead. I haven't seen anything like that since the Edo Tensei. I wonder what part the chess pieces play in it. Are they just a catalyst that holds what's necessary for the revival and her energy sets off the chain reaction, or are they just for show? Do the pieces contain some sort of sealing array? Also, what is this energy I keep feeling that is coming from this girl? I need to find out more about this resurrection technique. If she is able to control him just like Kabuto was able to, then I have a very bad situation on my hands. I don't want to fight another army of undead super-powered assholes, but I don't think this will be the best time. My arrival here would be very suspicious and could cause the girl to act irrationally. Best if I just send a shadow clone to tag her for the next couple of days. I have a feeling this will turn out to be troublesome in the end. Naruto's mind was racing as he watched the girl effortlessly pick up the boy and place him over her shoulder in a fireman-style carry. A red seal began to glow under her feet before she disappeared in a bright flash of red. Life is about to get a lot more interesting. I can feel it. Naruto thought to himself before fading away in a swirl of wind and leaves. The only evidence of the events that happened the night before was the circular patch of blood-stained grass in the center of the park. Deep in the untouched forests of Japan, a small clearing sat surrounded by the miles of dense forestry. Sitting in the center of the clearing was Naruto Uzumaki. The young man had his legs crossed with his hands folded on his lap. His eyes were closed and his body was completely still as he seemingly meditated. If one had the ability to see the energies of the world, they would see a very interesting sight taking place. The trees, the grass, the bushes, every single piece of the earth was filled to the brim with energy. This energy was not the type you would find in fallen angels, demons, devils, angels, or mythical gods. This energy was unique, forged from thousands of years of planetary movement. This energy was called natural energy. Ever since he had arrived in this world, Naruto had been rather interested in the natural energy it held. Unknown to most, each of the planets had their own type of natural energy. The energy was created from thousands of years of interaction between the planet, its inhabitants, and space. The energy was almost sentient in nature. It learned, adapted, and took in everything around it. It could be healed and purified, or it could be tainted with hatred and sadness. And the latter was exactly what had occurred with this planet. Naruto had done some research on the history of the planet and its interaction with humans. What he found definitely explained why the natural energy pouring from the planet was so hate-filled. In the earlier days of history, wars left the earth soaked with the blood of humans. As war advanced, the weapons that came along with it advanced, and these weapons left even more of a mark on the planet. Nuclear weapons filled the earth and the sky with chemicals that only served to increase the damage that was being done. More and more blood was shed and the earth unwillingly soaked it all in. That was just war. Other industries around the world had done just as much damage. Oil drilling and excavation left giant holes in the planet. Harmful chemicals were consistently pushed into the atmosphere by cigarettes, while factories ripped holes in the ozone layer. Artificial dams and human structures made rivers run dry and took away habitats from aquatic animals. In the end, the earth felt all of this. Rather, if it had a consciousness or not, it felt it all, and it absorbed it all. It grew angry at the ones who were causing it so much harm. Its once peaceful and healing energy turned tainted with hatred due to the treatment that it had suffered under the rule of mankind. Now, for most people, this wouldn't be a problem. The only real noticeable effect for most was an increase in erratic weather patterns and natural disasters. But the people who felt the biggest effect from the tainted energy were senjutsu users. The act of creating senjutsu involved drawing in an abundance of natural chakra and mixing it with the user's own life energy. The art of senjutsu required large chakra reserves and, more importantly, strong mental fortitude. For when you take in the natural energy, you also take in the emotions behind it. In Earth's case, you take in hundreds, even thousands of years of taint. The mental backlash of taking in that amount of emotions could literally drive a person insane, or leave them brain dead. The physical backlash could cause a heart attack or instant death. That's why it was impossible to take in natural energy without being in a meditative state. One needed to be at peace with themselves and at their strongest to be able to conquer the effects of natural chakra. When Naruto had first entered Sage Mode on this planet, he had been taken back by the amount of hate he could feel flowing through the earth. While in Sage Mode, his range of sense was spread over miles of land. And every single inch of it was flowing with this intense, tainted, hate-filled energy. And that energy was now currently flowing through every single drop of his chakra. It had taken a lot of his own mental fortitude to overcome the intense hatred, but in the end he won over it and purged it. When the purged chakra had exited Naruto's body and entered nature once again, it had spread through the area he had been meditating in. The grass seemed to shine a brighter shade of green, the sunlight seemed to gleam brighter, and the trees seemed livelier. It had actually put a smile on Naruto's face when he saw just how much the clearing had changed from the insertion of the natural energy. Ever since then, Naruto had dedicated his Sunday mornings to purging small pockets of natural energy around the areas of Japan. From the top of skyscrapers to the middle of forests, Naruto always made sure to at least spend 2 hours purging as much of the planet's energy as he could. To be honest, the amount he managed to purge wasn't even a drop in the bucket when it came to the amount of tainted natural energy that was all around the world. But as a sage, he had to at least try to make a difference. For the first time in the past hour, Naruto's chest moved as he inhaled a long breath. The morning sun was shining down on his form, illuminating his golden hair and giving him an almost ethereal appearance. The boy's chest slowly fell as he exhaled, unconsciously pumping another wave of the purified chakra back into the earth. Deep inside his own inner consciousness, Naruto's eyes fluttered open. He immediately took in the abundance of nature around him. Enormous trees formed the outline of a massive clearing. In the distance, an active volcano could be seen erupting. A plume of black smoke was rising from the active mouth of the natural disaster. Above the stack of smoke, high up in the sky, were 8 planetoid objects. They weren't big enough to be considered planets, but they definitely weren't meteors or anything like that. Each of the planets had a set amount of moons rotating slowly around it, stretching from 1 moon all the way up to 8 moons. How cliché of them. Naruto thought to himself, as he stood to his full height. He allowed himself to stretch for several seconds even though it wasn't entirely necessary considering he was currently in his own mindscape. When he had first arrived in the new world, Naruto had been almost completely alone. Lost with no idea where to go, most would have broken down and quit right then and there. Fortunately for the blonde-haired shinobi, he had the tailed beast sealed within him. The 9 beasts helped counsel him and guide him in his time of need. Their experience, inside and outside their containers, had given the boy and the beasts plenty to talk about and occupy his mind with. Their relationship had grown so much that Naruto allowed each of the beasts to reign over a domain in his mindscape. Each of the domains were represented by the planetoid-esque objects in the sky. The number of moons rotating around the planetoids represented which tailed beasts were located on it. It's not cliché. It's just an expression of their egos. A voice boomed out from behind the tree line. Naruto turned his body and looked on as a section of trees along the tree line began to shake. Slowly, a massive red paw came into view. Following the paw was a leg covered in red fur. The leg was connected to a slightly humanoid body. Attached to the body was the head of a fox, adorned with massive rabbit ears. The eyes held the pattern of the Rinnegan as the fox-like creature stared down at its container with a smirk on its face. Whole planets, though? Is that really necessary? Naruto asked the giant fox. The beast let out a soft hum before slowly sitting down, leaning his head on his front haunches. My brothers and sister are thousands of years old and spent the majority of the past couple of centuries sealed away. And in most cases, where their sealing took place was not exactly the most pleasant of places. They only wish to have a place where they can stretch their legs and roam free. Kurama stated while looking down at his container. Naruto could only nod at the explanation as he was sure he would feel the same way if their positions were switched. He went to took a seat on the forest ground but just before his butt could hit the ground, a chair rose from the ground to catch him and propel him upwards until he was eye level with the fox. When you put it like, I can understand. Anyways, what have you found out about the energy and resurrection technique the girl used? Naruto asked. After seeing the red-haired girl bring back the boy from the dead, he had immediately wanted to capture and interrogate the girl for information about the technique. Any ability that had the power to resurrect those from the dead, seemingly more powerful and rejuvenated than before, needed to not be in the wrong hands. Of course, he realized there was more to the girl than it seemed. He just needed to figure out what that was without tipping her off. That was why he had given Kurama full permission to delve into his memories of that night to analyze the chakra and technique in order to find out anything that could help to shed some light on the inner workings of the skill. The energy, if I had to compare it to something, is somewhat similar to the chakra created by the zero-tailed beast. It's dark, not corrupted but dark. The chess pieces seem to be a catalyst for it all. The energy produced by the girl set off the reaction within the chess pieces. When I took a closer look, the pieces seemed to serve 3 purposes. The first one was to revive the boy. I hypothesized that the pieces contained some sort of very powerful healing technique that helps revive the dead and bring their body to perfect condition. The second purpose is to fill the body with this dark chakra, basically converting the newly revived human to whatever the girl is. Trust me, she is not human. No normal human in this realm contains that much dark energy. Anyways, I'm getting off track. The third purpose the piece serves is the most worrying to me, honestly. You see, the energy that fills the revived body carries similarities to the energy the girls sent through the pieces. The energy is integrated through every single fiber of that boy. The third step basically bounds the boy to the girl. I don't know how, but I can sense a connection between the two, and it definitely wasn't there before he was revived. Kurama finished as his tails swung lazily behind him. Naruto had his head propped up against his hand as he went over the new information. It honestly did not help to alleviate any of the worries he felt. This teenage girl had the ability to revive the dead and bound them to herself while making them even stronger than before. The strange energy that she possessed that had the ability to revive and strengthen the deceased was also just as worrying. There's also another thing you should know. I took the liberty of looking a bit deeper into your memory, and along with chakra, I could sense the exact same dark energy coming from your little girlfriend. There's a possibility that she may have gone through the same process as that boy. Naruto gave no visible reaction to the news, earning a soft sigh from the tailed beast. While the boy may have acted stoic to the news, Kurama knew that the information was affecting his container. If there was one thing that could get a reaction out of Naruto, it was anything that affected his precious people. The giant beast rose its paw into the air and gave the boy a reassuring pat on his head. He then stood to his full height and walked out of the clearing, leaving the Naruto alone to himself and his thoughts. What is going on, and how is Kaneko-chan involved? Rias Gremory tapped her fingers in a rhythmic pattern against one of the many hardwood desks located within Ko Academy. Though, if one was to be honest, this wasn't just any normal, old desk. The thing that made this desk special was the fact that it was located in the student council room. The student council was made up of an illustrious group of students located within the education system of Ko Academy. The head and leader of this council were no other than Sona Citri, heiress to the Citri clan and the very same person that the red-haired girl was waiting for. It's very unusual that Sona-chan would be late. Especially for one of our meetings. Rias thought to herself as her fingers continued to tap against the desk. Not even a minute after the thought, the door to the council room creaked open, revealing a somewhat flustered Sona Citri. The black-haired girl took a second to remove any out-of-place hair and dust off her uniform before walking over to her desk. I am sorry for the delay, Gremory-san, but I have recently acquired a rather stubborn pawn that has been giving me a lot of trouble. I had to deal with him before I could make my way to this meeting, the girl stated while taking a seat at her desk. Rias nodded as a bright flash of light covered the desk the girls were sitting at. The light soon disappeared to reveal an intricate chessboard now sat upon the table. It's not a problem. I recently managed to get a new pawn myself, and he is a bit of a handful, Rias said as she began the first move of the game. Her having the first move in their games was unspoken tradition that was in place ever since Sona had soundly beat Rias in their first game. Yes, I heard, or rather I sensed it. Issei Hayato, one of the members of the perverted trio, but also a suspected sacred gear owner. A rather interesting pick, even for you and your diverse peerage, Sona stated as she quickly moved her own piece. The Citri heir would be lying if she wasn't just slightly envious of the amount of unique pieces the girl sitting in front of her had acquired. While she had trained her peerage to the best of her abilities and knew that they would be able to evenly compete with Rias, she still felt slightly jealous since the boy was suspected to have a sacred gear within his possession. Though her own new addition to her peerage somewhat made up for that fact. Yes, he is quite the handful, honestly. His status as a perverted individual wasn't exactly well received by some of my peerage members. He is still very rough around the edges, but we're working the kinks out. Sona hummed at the response as she once again analyzed the board. Rias and she had been playing against each other in the game of strategy for years at this point. Ever since the two had met each other as children, a natural rivalry had formed between them. Their position in the Devil Society, the power their siblings had, and the natural ego they each contained made for the perfect formula for a rivalry. Unfortunately, when they were younger, either had a full peerage, so they were forced to compete against each other games of chess. That tradition had carried on throughout the entirety of their childhoods and continued to this day. Usually Sona would find herself on the winning end of most of their matches. She was the more intelligent of the two, and as a child, there was almost no competition between them. Though as time went on, Rias adapted and began to use unorthodox strategies that would catch the Citri heiress off guard. Their matches had become more even as time passed, but usually Sona would still come out as victorious most of the time. I sensed your brother in town a few days ago. Is everything okay? At this, Rias froze before releasing a sigh. Sona raised a single eyebrow at this. She knew that the red-haired girl's brother could be rather eccentric. The same thing could be said about her sister, but the girl never reacted like that when she asked about Surzex in the past. Yes, I needed to meet with him for a personal matter. Kaneko recently found herself a boyfriend and I was rather suspicious of the man. He is around our age and doesn't even attend school. I was attempting to find out more information on him by using my brother, but that plan failed horribly, the red-haired girl stated as she slumped down in her seat. Sona blinked olishly at the information, not exactly comprehending what she had just heard. Kaneko? As in your peerage member Kaneko? Rias nodded her head solemnly, shocking Sona even more. I know. I was shocked too. And now she is mad at me for prying into the relationship. I just want to make sure that she is okay. Rias sighed out once again. Sona stared at her fellow heiress for several seconds before snapping her fingers. The chessboard in front of them disappeared in a bright flash of light, leaving the table clear and the red-haired heiress confused. Sona stood up from her chair and began to walk towards the door. Wait! Where are you going? We haven't finished our match yet. Sona stopped right at the entrance of the door, her body seemingly freezing up at the sound of her friend's voice. Very slowly, the Citri heiress turned towards her fellow heiress and looked the red-haired girl in the eyes. I am the president of the student council. My job is to uphold the reputation and mood of the school to the best of my abilities using whatever resources I have at my disposal. Kaneko-san is seen as the mascot of this school. This emotional integrity of this school cannot withstand the fallout of an upset Kaneko. I refuse to let this school fall because of that, the girl said with an unusual amount of passion held within her voice. Rias blinked at the girl's rather unusual behavior, as the Citri made a sharp turn back towards the door and charged out of the office. Well, that was unexpected. Kaneko shivered once again as she slowly made her way through the streets of Kuo. The entire day, she had chills running up and down her spine. A constant sense of foreboding hung over her head during school. It took all of her mental strength not to attack the closest person next to her whenever the foreboding feeling reached an apex. Her instincts as a Nekishu and as a reincarnated devil constantly screamed at her that something bad was going to happen. It had even gotten to a point where she had even reached out to her fellow peerage members to see if they felt the same. She made sure to avoid Rias and Aquino as she was still rather upset with them because of their actions. A shiver traveled up the young girl's spine once again, breaking her focus and almost making her stumble. That had been the strongest one she had felt so far today. She could literally feel the hair on the back of her neck raising as she continued her journey. What is going on? Kaneko thought to herself as she continued to make her way towards her boyfriend's shop. The walk only took a short 5 minutes, but during those 5 minutes, she was bombarded with shivers and a sense of foreboding that grew stronger with each step. After what seemed like an eternity, she got to the entrance of Naruto's shop and was rather shocked to see that the place was completely empty. She saw that the sign said open, so she shrugged her shoulders and went in. Immediately, the chills running through her body stopped and the foreboding feeling faded away. A small smile popped up on her face as she walked to the back room. She hopped over the counter separating the back of the shop from the front of the shop and walked to the back room. Naruto-kun, are you back here? The girl asked as she opened the door to the room. She immediately noticed that the room was dimly lit with only a single bulb in the corner, providing the room with only the tiniest amount of light. The second thing she noticed was her boyfriend. The boy was sitting directly in the center of the room on a stool. His face was overshadowed by his blonde locks as he slowly and methodically cleaned a small, glass cup. Naruto? Kaneko called out the boy's name due to his lack of notice to her presence. The boy's head slowly raised up, revealing his bright, clear blue eyes to the girl. A soft smile adorned his face as he continued to run his rag over the small glass. Hey Ko-chan. Why don't you sit next to me? Kaneko's eyes immediately locked on to the stool directly next to the teen. How she didn't notice it when she first entered the room, she didn't know. But she had no reason to refuse him as she slowly walked over and plopped her butt on the stool. Why aren't there any customers in the store? Kaneko said as she stared out into the empty store. Naruto remained silent next to her for several seconds before letting out a small sigh. Kaneko's head turned and she watched as the blonde-haired boy slowly set the glass down and turned to her. The girl almost recoiled by the steely look the boy's eyes had suddenly taken on. She had never seen this look in his eyes before. Kaneko-chan, I know we haven't been together for long, but I want to ask you something. Kaneko's heart completely skipped a beat when she heard this. Millions of possibilities immediately began to flash through her head as her boyfriend continued to stare at her. Was he going to ask her to take their relationship to another level? Was he going to ask her to marry him? Was he going to ask her about Rias and Aquino? Kaneko, are you a human? At this, Kaneko froze. Her body, mind and heart just seemed to stop moving. Of the millions of possibilities that crossed her mind only seconds ago, this had not been one of them. I guess I should explain some things first. I know that you have chakra. Once again, Kaneko's heart was forced to skip a beat at the sudden revelation. I've been able to sense it from you since the day we met, but I was unsure on whether you knew about it up until recently. Kaneko had to hold in a growl as her mind immediately went to the king of her peerage. Her interference in her relationship had forced this to happen. I was unsure until that girl Rias showed up. I sensed an energy coming from her. Though hers was not chakra, it was much darker. Then a red-headed man came into my shop carrying the same energy. That set off even more alarms in my head. But the final straw happened a few nights ago. I watched as your friend she raised a boy from the dead. I could sense the same energy flowing through her now in that boy. And when I took a deeper look into your energy, I saw you had the same energy. I can feel it intertwining with your chakra. So, all of that leads me to my question, are you a human? Or have died before? Naruto asked once again. By this point in the conversation, Kaneko's mind had started to work once again. It was racing as it attempted to process everything she had just heard. A part of her was furious with her king when she realized that she had somehow gotten her brother involved if the statement about the red-headed man was anything to go by. A part of her was terrified that everything she had tried so hard to hide from the boy had somehow been revealed to him within a week of meeting Rias and Aquino. But finally, The last part of her was very curious of how the boy beside her was able to sense all of this. And that part of her was the first to speak. How are you able to sense all of this? The girl managed to stutter out. Naruto let out a long sigh before standing from his stool. Kaneko watched as the boy stripped himself of his apron before stretching out his arms. The boy closed his eyes and took in a very deep breath. Kaneko's eyes widened when she felt a massive amount of chakra wash over her. She didn't notice her nekashu features come out as the warm chakra poured over her entire body. It felt so warm and comforting. It surrounded her entire body and filled her up completely. I've been keeping some secrets from you as well, Kaneko-chan. And I can't exactly expect you to be honest with me if I'm not being completely honest with you. I'm not from this world. I am from a world of chakra using ninjas. I am a sage, a master of senjutsu. I am a ninja and I have several demons sealed inside my stomach. Naruto blurted out. His eyes glanced down to his girlfriend in order to judge her reaction. He knew it was somewhat of a risk to just throw everything at the girl all at once. He was very shocked to see the white cat ears sitting on her head, and the white cat tail laying limply behind her. He had known his girlfriend was special, but he never expected anything to this extent. As senjutsu? The girl stuttered out while slowly standing from the stool. Naruto slowly nodded his head before closing his eyes once again. Kaneko's heart almost leapt out of her mouth when she felt the familiar feeling of nature surround the boy. She could literally feel the hate of the world slowly filling the boy. No! Kaneko screamed before pouncing on the boy. Naruto was knocked out of his meditative state when the full weight and strength of the reincarnated devil girl with the power of a rook slammed into his chest. He was lifted off his feet and slammed full force into the nearby wall. The concrete wall cracked as it absorbed the full force of the teen's body being propelled by Kaneko's strength. Kaneko, on the other hand, was now straddling her boyfriend's hips while her hands laid on his chest. She had immediately dashed over to him when she realized what she had done. Her breathing was heavy as she stared down at the slightly shocked boy. She didn't mean to use her full strength to tackle the boy, but when she had started to sense the nature chakra flowing into the boy, she had no idea how to react. Her instincts had taken over and her body had just moved on its own. I am sorry, Naruto-kun. I didn't mean to hit you that hard. Kaneko slowly trailed off when she noticed that her boyfriend was now chuckling beneath her. His chuckles turned into a full-blown laughter that sent the girl spiraling in confusion. Her confusion was soon erased when she felt the boy's hand softly brush against one of her ears. The stiffness in her body immediately melted away and her body became lax at her boyfriend's touch. Naruto continued to slowly stroke the girl's ears and head as she melted more into his embrace. You don't have to apologize at all, Ko-chan. I deserved it for keeping all of that from you. Though it looks like you've been keeping some stuff from me as well, Naruto said. He couldn't even tell if the girl was listening to him anymore as his fingers assaulted every single pleasurable area on her head. She had even started purring a couple of seconds ago, adding even more cuteness to the situation. Kaneko was currently experiencing one of the most pleasurable moments of her life. All thoughts of the previous conversation had went straight out the window as the blonde-haired boy's hand continued to assault her head. She almost let out a hiss when his hand left her head but was quickly silenced when she felt the boy's lips press up against hers. His hand immediately found her head once again, and she was forced to moan into the kiss as the combination overloaded her sense of pleasure. She slowly began to grind her hips against her boyfriend's as the kiss grew deeper and deeper. Her own hands began to wander the sculpted body of the man beneath her. She was pleasantly surprised when she felt a slowly growing lump begin to press against her rear end. She could feel what she could only guess to be her boyfriend's erection slowly press up against her ass. Just the feeling of it made the girl shiver with pleasure as the kiss continued on. And what is going on here? A voice cut through the entire mood of the situation, making Naruto and Kaneko freeze. Naruto had no idea who the voice belonged to, and ended up just being stunned by the sudden intrusion. Kaneko, on the other hand, recognized the strict and stern voice and immediately grew angry at the sound of it. Her hands balled up into fists as her anger quickly filled her body. Well, Kaneko-san, would you like to explain yourself? You know this behavior is rather unfit for a freshman of Ko Academy. Kaneko's head slowly turned and her eyes met with Sona Citri's. The president of the student council was standing in the door of the back room with her hands folded behind her back. Rias Gremory stood behind the girl with a shocked but slightly worried expression on her face as she observed the situation. Kaneko-san, I think it's best that you get up so we can leave. Kaneko didn't even allow the girl to finish as she leapt up off her boyfriend and pounced at the girl, her fists balled up in preparation of hitting the student body president. Sona, not expecting that type of reaction from the girl, could only stand in shock as the Nekashu grew closer and closer. Rias attempted to throw up a barrier spell, but it was obvious that she wasn't going to make it. Luckily for everyone in the room, Naruto's senses when it came to negative emotions were very acute. He had sensed the buildup of anger in Kaneko, and had acted appropriately. Just as she leapt off of his body, he had moved as well. His top speed far surpassed the girl and he managed to slip past her flying form. He placed himself in front of the girl and managed to catch her just before she managed to tear out the throat of the Citri heir. I think it's best if you two leave, Naruto said as he wrapped his arms around his rampaging girlfriend. Sona continued to stare in shock as she looked into the eyes of the pissed-off Nekashu. She was snapped out of her stupor when she felt Riasa's hand land on her shoulder. She turned her head back towards the redhead, and saw her shaking her head. Sona turned back towards the odd couple and saw that the girl had yet to calm down. The heiress coughed into her palm and straightened her back in an attempt to regain some sense of the dignity she had walked in with. "We will be discussing this later, Kaneko-san," Sona said in a clipped tone before quickly exiting the room with Rias in tow. The two heiresses scurried out of the store with Kaneko's hissing following them all the way out. We really messed up this time." Kaneko couldn't help but release an angry hiss at the retreating form of the pair of heiresses. The anger that she was feeling far surpassed anything she had felt before. Even the feeling of Naruto's arms wrapped around her couldn't quell the negative emotions that had built up inside of her. Naruto released a sigh as he continued to embrace his agitated girlfriend. The emotions that were quite literally pouring out from the girl were very noticeable to the sage, even without his empathetic abilities. Kaneko had already made it known that Ria's initial curiosity in their relationship had irritated her. When this new girl had come charging into his shop and started to order her around, he instantly knew that it was going to set off the Nico girl. He had felt the build-up of emotions in his girlfriend with each word that came out of the black-haired girl's mouth. Naruto's attention was snapped back to the girl when he heard her hiss once again. It seemed she wasn't going to calm down by herself anytime soon. A small smirk made its way onto his face when he realized he would have to calm her down himself. "Naruto-kun." Kaneko managed to mumble out through the haze of pleasure that had overtaken her. Her boyfriend's attention was now directed towards the young girl's face. Naruto immediately noticed the heavy blush that had settled on her face. Her breathing seemed labored as her eyes became half-lidded. It was very obvious to him what the girl was currently feeling. Naruto flopped down alongside the girl as he attempted to catch his breath. The couple remained silent for several minutes, simply basking in the glow of losing their virginities to each other. "You never answered my question." Naruto was the one who broke the silence between the two. Kaneko turned her head and saw the boy was staring at her with a small smile on his face. A brief moment of conflict ripped through her brain, but the reassurance of the boy's smile quickly squashed that feeling. "As you have probably guessed by my extra features." Naruto's hand moved to the girl's ears and gently began to stroke them, earning him an appreciative purr from the girl. "I'm not a human. I'm something known as a nekashu, a special type of cat like Yukai. But more importantly, I am a devil." And with this, Kaneko forced her demonic wings from out of her back, ripping 2 holes into the back of her school shirt. Naruto felt an immediate spike in the tainted energy coming from the girl as soon as she revealed her wings. His eyes were focused on the leathery skin that covered the demonic, bat wings. He felt his hands slowly leave the girl's ears and reached over to her wings. His hands grazed over the appendages, an action that he noticed elicited a shiver from his girlfriend. "A devil? I certainly wasn't expecting that," Naruto said while observing the girl's wings. Kaneko looked at the boy out the corner of her eyes, watching him for any negative reaction to the revelation. On the outside she had put on her usual stoic face, but on the inside she was extremely nervous. This wasn't just a tiny childhood secret that couples would share with each other and laugh about. This was a life and relationship-altering secret that, depending on his reaction, could ruin everything that had been built between them. A hard lump formed in her throat as more and more bad thoughts swirled through her head as the seconds continued to pass. I can sense your emotions, Koch-chan. There's no need to worry, this won't change anything between us." The negative emotions were literally pouring off the girl's skin, but Naruto didn't need his empathetic abilities to know how the girl was feeling. Though he was surprised by the sudden revelation, he had already mentally prepared himself for something outlandish like this. After all, he did come from a world full of ninjas, demons, sharkmen, demonic princesses with unlimited power, and even a plant man. A devil as a girlfriend was nothing compared to what he had been through. Now, as I was saying before, I suddenly got launched into the wall. Kaneko had the decency to blush when Naruto directed his stare at her. "I am not from this world, I am actually not even sure I'm from this dimension." Naruto went on to explain his past, his true one and not the censored version he had been feeding Kaneko over the course of their relationship. He explained his early career as a ninja and his struggles during it. He told the story of his adventures in Wave and his encounters with Zabuza and Haku. He went over his adventures in the land of snow, tea, sand, and so many others. He left out some parts which included the Pain's assault and the complete massacre of Konoha, some of the events in the Fourth Shinobi War, and Kagaya almost enslaving the entirety of the shinobi forces around the world. Other than that, he went into full detail about his journeys and his life. "If I didn't know you, I would assume you're crazy and walk away from you. But the fact that I can now sense an enormous amount of chakra flowing through you proves your claims. Plus the fact that you know how to use senjutsu." Naruto frowned at the girl's reluctance to even say senjutsu, but he decided to drop the matter as there were more pressing things to talk about. "I guess it's my turn now." Kaneko started out before explaining a bit of her own history. She went over the history of Nekashu and their sudden extinction. She talked about her sister but purposefully left out any mention senjutsu. The topic was still very sensitive to her, and the fact that her boyfriend apparently was adept in using it did not change her opinion about the technique. She explained how she came to be under the ownership of Rias Gremory due to her sister's actions and through the use of the peerage system. She had to quickly explain the Gremory family's treatment of their peerage member when Naruto had learned that Rias basically owned her. She could tell that fact still bothered the boy, but at least he was no longer liable to go out and slit Rias' throat in her sleep because of it. I guess my nickname fits you a lot more than I originally thought, Nico-chan, Naruto said as the girl finished up her monologue. Kaneko turned her head away from the boy in order to hide the embarrassed blush that had appeared on her cheek. Her attempts at hiding it didn't last long when she felt Naruto's arms wrap around her stomach and her butt suddenly leave the ground. Not even a second later, she found herself sitting in her boyfriend's lap with him petting her ears. She immediately melted into the embrace, enjoying the light petting the boy was providing her with. Now that I know about all of this, I think it would be best if I had a conversation with your friends. I need to clear things up with them about our relationship and have a small chat with this Rias girl. Kaneko turned her head towards the boy and gave him a mock glare and a small slap on the chest. Don't give me that look, I'm not going to go in and threaten her. I just want to have a little talk with the girl that claims to own my girlfriend. Kaneko had a feeling that this little talk he was talking about would turn out to be a lot more than little. Look, I'll wait for your school's entrance tomorrow, and when you get out, you can lead me to the club. Everything will be fine, Naruto said with a large grin on his face. Kaneko had a very bad feeling about this. Sona sighed to herself as she looked through yet another group of complaints from the student body. Her job as the president of the student council didn't just consist of looking imposing and berating students in the hallways. She also had to deal with a constant stream of paperwork from students, teachers, clubs, even the janitors. Most of these consisted of complaints, but some actually dealt with requests, like the one she was holding in her. It was a formal request by the swim team to be allowed to use lethal force on the perverted trio if they were caught attempting to peep on them again. Sona stared at the paper for several long seconds, debating on actually signing off on it. Unfortunately, she knew that dealing with the consequences of their death would be a lot worse than their current actions. So with a heavy heart and a sigh, she wrote declined on the paper. Sona's head rose when she heard the knob to her door twist. Not even a second later, the oak door swung open and in came stepping in a very beautiful young girl. The girl had long straight black hair that extended all the way down to her knees with split bangs and heterochromic eyes, with a violet left eye and a light brown right eye. In addition to wearing the Ko Academy girls' school uniform, she also wore blue, semi-rimmed glasses with square lenses. Tsubaki-chan, it's very nice to see you. Sona greeted her queen piece, who so happened to be one of her closest friend. The young girl smiled and nodded to her king while walking over towards her desk. It's nice to see you too, Sona-sama, but unfortunately I have some news to report. Sona immediately stiffened up at the sound of her queen's voice. It was very rare that the school had to deal with any problems, excluding the perverted trio. For Tsubaki to actually feel the need to report it straight to her, enough people must have complained about it around campus, or it had to do with her duties as a devil. There have been several complaints about a suspicious figure hanging around the entrance of the campus. He's been described as a blonde-haired delinquent with whisker tattoos. Usually I would just leave issues like this alone, but the teachers claim it's been a distraction to their classes, especially for the female population, and asked for us to deal with it appropriately, Tsubaki stated while pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. Sona's eyebrows rose up at the whisker comment as a figure popped up in her head. Could he had possibly tracked her down to school in order to exact revenge? Was he planning something nefarious against the school? She needed to find out. Come with me, Tsubaki. We'll confront this delinquent together. It probably would have been smart if you actually asked her when she got out of school. Naruto huffed as Kurama's voice ranged through his head. The boy glanced at his wrist to look at his non-existent watch, causing him to sigh. He really needed to get one of those. It's not my fault. I was still a little shocked at the fact that my girlfriend was a devil who apparently is basically enslaved to another teenage girl. It's not something you learn about every night, Naruto uttered back sarcastically at the tailed beast. The giant fox let out a deep chuckle before going silent, signaling that it had dropped the issue with the boy. Stupid foxes and their smart-ass remarks. And stupid school, I'm not even in it, and it's annoying me, Naruto huffed out while crossing his arms. The blonde-haired boy stood directly outside the school's entrance. He was leaning against the brick wall that surrounded the entirety of the campus. The sun was high in the sky and didn't look to be setting any time soon. Can I ask why you are leaning against my campus walls? Naruto's head shot up at the sudden sound of a voice. He was surprised to see the same black-haired girl who had attempted to berate Kaneko standing in front of him. The girl was wearing the same school outfit and had the same stoic face that she had entered his shop with. Standing beside her, however, was a new girl. The best way to describe her was a tall, black-haired beauty in a schoolgirl's outfit with glasses. I'm waiting for someone. Do you girls happen to know when the school day ends? Naruto asked the girl, ignoring the glare the tall one was sending him. Sona continued to stare at the blonde-haired boy, her thoughts masked from Naruto. The boy in front of her was obviously not normal, or at least not stupid, considering the fact that he had been present when Kaneko had her ears and tail out. Just how much did he actually know about the girl, or the supernatural world was the real question she wanted answered. That information is none of your business. You're free to wait for that person outside the boundaries of the campus. Sona spoke as she looked Naruto in the eye. The two had a small stare-off for several long seconds before Naruto finally relented. The boy released a loud sigh before pushing himself off the wall and turning his back to the girls. He took several steps away from the girls and it looked like he was about to leave before he suddenly stopped in his tracks. I'm sorry girls, but I can't make it that easy for you. And with that, Naruto brought himself down into a crouch before sending himself flying through the air into a backflip. Tsubaki and Sona watched in shock as the blonde-haired boy flew over their heads before landing several feet behind them in a crouch. The teen slowly stood to his full height, dusted off his clothing with his hands before flashing a smile to the girls. I think I'll just explore the campus while I'm waiting. Catch me if you can. And with that, Naruto went dashing off towards the school, leaving Sona and Tsubaki standing in shock. Gather the rest of the peerage and catch that boy before the end of the school day. I will not let that delinquent run wild on campus. Sona uncharacteristically yelled at Tsubaki. The girl hesitated for a moment before shooting her king a small nod and disappearing on the spot. Kaneko sighed to herself as her eyes glanced up to the clock once again. The two tiny arms inside the machine didn't seem to have moved since the last time she checked it. Her eyes glanced back to the teacher who was drawling on about some basic math. Her attention was stolen away from the teacher when she heard a very faint knocking. Her head turned, along with several students near her, to the window located near her desk. They saw absolutely nothing but the campus grounds, making them believe they had just imagined it. Their attention was brought back to the teacher after a couple of seconds of searching, albeit with a lot of reluctance. Several minutes passed before another knock, this one much quieter, caught Kaneko's attention. She glanced to the window once again and was surprised to see her boyfriend smiling at her from outside the window. The boy waved at her before pointing to the door of the classroom. Kaneko rolled her eyes at the boy before shooting the clock a quick glance. She still had a full 30 minutes before the class ended, and she honestly didn't think she was going to last that long. She nodded at the boy before turning her attention back into the classroom, raising her hand and asking the teacher to be excused to use the bathroom. The man relented to her request and Kaneko dashed out of the room, her books and bag in hand. Kaneko didn't even manage to take a step out the school building before she was snatched into the arms of her boyfriend. A smile slowly made its way onto her face as she was lifted off her feet and into the arms of the person she loved. Hey there, Koch-chan. Sorry, but I couldn't really wait any longer, especially knowing that you were within petting distance. Kaneko nodded as the boy placed her bag on his back and let the girl back down onto her feet. Did you bring in? Kaneko was interrupted when Naruto placed a large lollipop in her mouth. The girl blinked at the sudden taste of the treat, but immediately began to lick and gnaw on it. Naruto let out a chuckle as he watched the girl attack the sucker with her mouth. So from what I've learned in my brief time here, we have about 30 minutes until your school ends. What do you want to do? Kaneko took several seconds to enjoy the treat given to her by the blonde-haired teen before removing it from her mouth with a small pop and responding, Ryu-sama actually has final period free and should be in the clubroom right now. We could go there and get this over it. Kaneko said before placing the lollipop back in her mouth. Naruto hummed for several seconds before nodding his head and taking a step forward. He was completely unprepared for Kaneko to leap from the ground and onto his back. His arms quickly shot back and wrapped around the girl's thighs as her arms wrapped around his neck. I will aid you. The girl's speech was muffled with the lollipop in her mouth, though Naruto was still able to understand her. Naruto rolled his eyes at his girlfriend's actions before slowly marching forward. Every couple of dozens of steps, the girl would tap his shoulder to tell him which way to turn. Eventually, after several minutes of walking, the two found themselves in front of a large building that was completely separated from any other building on the campus. The building's exterior could be described as old as parts of it looked dilapidated and overrun by plant wildlife. Is this it? Naruto asked, earning him an affirmative hum in response. Naruto observed the building for several seconds, looking at the several windows and side doors just in case he had to make a quick escape. With his observation finished, he stepped into the building with his girlfriend latched onto his back. It took several more minutes for them to reach the actual clubroom, and when they arrived, Naruto was surprised by the interior. The clubroom interior was a wood-paneled room with Victorian-style couches and chairs along the walls. One side of the room seemed to be equipped with baths and steam was currently pouring out from over there. Sit while I get Rias, Naruto-kun. Kaneko muttered while hopping off his back. Naruto watched as the girl disappeared behind one of the curtains in the clubroom before he sat down on the rather comfortable couch. This place absolutely reeks of that tainted energy. There's different variations of it strewn all across the room. The girl most likely has multiple people under her rule. Be careful, we don't know how strong these devils are, Kurama warned. Naruto nodded to himself as he continued to observe the room. Naruto's attention was brought away from the room's scent when he saw his girlfriend exit the back room of the clubhouse. The girl immediately marched over to him and plopped herself down into his lap. She should be out soon, the girl said before going quiet. Naruto placed his hand on her head before beginning to gently stroke it. He could feel the tension in her body slowly melt away as his hands rubbed away her stress plus. The couple stayed like this for a full minute, simply enjoying being with each other with the silence in the room. I'm sorry for keeping you two waiting. The moment was unfortunately ruined when the sound of Ria's voice cut through the silence. Naruto's eyes locked onto the redheads as she stepped from behind the curtain, fully dressed in her school outfit. Ria gave a small incline of her head to the both of them before walking over to her desk and sitting down in it. "It's quite all right. We weren't waiting for long," Naruto said with a polite smile on his face. Rias nodded and the room once again descended into silence. Neither of the two went to speak first as Naruto saw fit to simply sit on the couch and continue to stroke the girl's head. Kaniko's eyes were open and she was shooting a not-so-obvious glare at her king. "So I was informed you wanted to speak with me," Ria said. Naruto nodded his head before looking down at Kaniko. The Nekisha met his look before giving a small pout and a huff before sliding off the boy's lap. Naruto shot her an appreciative grin before standing up from his seat and focusing his gaze on the red-headed girl. "Yeah. Recently there seems to be a misunderstanding between you, Kaniko and I. I've come here to clear some of those issues." Naruto paused for several seconds to make sure the girl was still on track. "Whether you believe me or not, I love Kaniko. I know we haven't been together for long, but my feelings for her are sincere. I believe her feelings for me are also sincere. And your butting into our relationship is helping no one. I am aware of your special relationship with Kaniko, and it's very sweet that you care for her so much, but you are taking things too far." Naruto finished by crossing his arms over his chest. Ria sat silently in her seat, seemingly thinking over his words before responding. "I do not know you and I do not trust you. Kaniko is a very close friend of mine, and I care about her well-being. I will not allow anyone to harm her physically or emotionally. With all due respect, your actions during the past few weeks have been more emotionally disturbing to Kaniko than anything I have ever done to her. With all due respect, I've spent years with Kaniko, and I know her very well. If I was really bothering her that much, I would know. With all due respect, that last part is bullshit. You take that back," Rias yelled as she shot up from her seat. "Make me take it back," Naruto said in a childish tone. Kaniko rolled her eyes at her boyfriend's behavior as she watched Rias step from out behind her desk. The girl's anger was on full display as she stomped her way up to Naruto. "Take it back. No. Take it back. No. Take it back. Rias-sama, I'm her Issei," came bursting into the clubroom only to have a couch cushion come crashing into his face. Rias and Naruto's eyes turned to Kaniko and saw the girl was staring innocently at the wall while munching on one of her cookies. "Look, the bottom line is that your interference in our relationship is bothering you, Kaniko and I. I'm asking for the both of us to stop it. I know that Kaniko has obligations to you due to her being a devil. Yes, I know about that, and I understand. But there's a certain boundary you need to stay behind when it comes to our relationship," Naruto stated while flaring a bit of his chakra for emphasis. Ria's eyes widened when she felt the quick burst of chakra wash over her. The burst was strong enough to send the girl tumbling backwards onto her, but not even several seconds later, the door to the clubhouse bursted open and in rushed Sona, Tsubaki, Akino and a princely-looking boy. Each one of them had their devil energy flowing around them as they looked at Rias's down form. Their eyes locked onto the blonde-haired boy as they collectively narrowed their eyes at him. "This may look bad, but I promise you it's all a big misunderstanding. Let's just talk it out." The room was silent for several seconds before Issei suddenly charged into the room, his gauntlet out as he ran towards Naruto. "Attack!" With a single word, all hell broke loose. "How much energy do you sense coming from them?" Naruto said while pacing inside his mindscape. As soon as the boy had come charging into the room and screamed attack, Naruto had retreated into his mental space. He wanted to talk with his tenant before confronting the Tiage in front of him, a decent amount. It's nothing compared to what the red-headed man had. The Rias girl and Sona seem to have the most energy. The boy charging at you at the moment has a small amount, but I'm sensing an even greater energy coming from his gauntlet. It's almost like something is sealed within it. It could prove to be somewhat interesting, though I doubt you'll have to use any of the heavy-hitting techniques to subdue them all." Kurama rattled off. "So some of the basic 3 and plain old taijutsu mixed with a bit of humiliation? Exactly." Naruto grinned at the fox before raising his fist. Kurama raised his massive paw and bumped it against the boy's, ejecting the blonde-haired teen out of his own mind. Naruto opened his eyes and saw that barely any time had passed. The plain-looking boy was still charging towards him with his gauntlet out and prepared for a punch. He could see the other students preparing their own techniques behind the boy. "Let's see what you devils are made of," Naruto muttered to himself as the boy finally appeared in front of him. Issei planted his foot just in front of Naruto before attempting to send a heavy punch at Naruto's chest. The shinobi almost tore his hair out at the slow speed and horrible form the boy was showcasing. He was moving faster than this during his academy years. I hope that the others aren't as disappointing as he is, Naruto thought to himself as he casually slapped aside the boy's punch. He almost laughed to himself as the force behind his slap sent the boy off balance and stumbling into a wall. Naruto tilted his head to the side just as a bolt of what appeared to be lightning flew by him. The bolt zipped by his head and slammed into the wall behind him. His eyes locked onto the busted black-haired girl that was erotically licking her lips while staring at him. He could see sparks literally shooting off of her skin as the girl shivered in place. "Great, another battle-thirsty sadist," Naruto mumbled to himself before absent-mindedly unsealing a kunai into his palm and parrying a sword strike. He turned his head slightly and saw the Prince of Ko struggling to overpower him. The boy's face was contorted into a mask of concentration as he put all his strength behind his sword. Naruto chuckled at the boy's attempt before suddenly jumping back, causing Kiba to become off balance just as another bolt of lightning sailed by Naruto. While in the air, Naruto could see the girl standing by Sona's side pull out a Naginata before summoning her bat wings and taking off towards him. The girl flew through the air towards him while lifting her weapon above her head. She used her wings to propel herself forward while bringing the bladed part of the weapon down on his form. Gotcha! Tsubaki yelled as she felt the blade cut cleanly through the boy's body. Her happiness was instantly sucked away when she saw the boy's body disappear in a puff of smoke before a destroyed couch cushion took her place. Kaneko blinked in surprise when she felt the texture of the cushion she was sitting on suddenly change. She looked down and noticed that the cushion she had been sitting on suddenly had a pair of legs. She heard a soft laughter before she felt a pair of lips land gently on the crown of her head. Sit this out, I want to see how good your friends are. I promise not to hurt them or get hurt myself. Kaneko heard Naruto say before she suddenly found herself back on a couch cushion. She sat there in shock for a brief moment before shrugging and going back to observing the fight. Naruto made his reappearance into the battle by dashing over to Kiba and landing a quick kick into the boy's side. The handsome schoolboy was lifted off his feet and thrown through the air by the force behind the kick. He ended up unconscious inside a wall as his body broke through it. One down. Naruto muttered to himself as he sidestepped yet another bolt of lightning. His eyes returned to the dark-haired girl and saw that a blush was now spreading across her face as she charged up yet another lightning strike. Naruto turned his head and saw Issei charging towards. Something must have reinvigorated the teen as his speeds were much quicker. Though the speed was still barely breaking genin level, it was still much better than the academy level sprint the boy had shown at the beginning of the fight. It still wasn't going to be enough to beat him. For the president! Issei yelled before bringing his fist down onto Naruto, only to hit nothing but air. The boy didn't even notice that Naruto was now crouching behind him with his hands clasped together. Issei began to yell a string of curses for losing sight of the blonde but was interrupted when he heard a phrase that would end up haunting him for the rest of his life. Konohagakure hidden secret taijutsu technique, 1,000 years of death. The occupants of the room gasped at the dramatic name of the technique. Kaneko was taken back that her boyfriend would even think to use a technique with a name like that, especially since he had just promised to not hurt her friends. She may have not actually enjoyed Issei's perverted tendencies, but he didn't want him to die. Any worries were completely wiped from her mind when she saw her boyfriend shove his index and middle finger into Issei's ass. The boy's mouth contorted in a scream of pain, but not a single sound came out. Not even a second later, the boy was lifted off his feet and was sent crashing through the ceiling of the clubroom. I completely do not blame Kakashi-sensei for using that on me back during the bell test. It is so funny to watch. Naruto thought to himself as Issei let out an unconscious groan from his hole in the roof. The blonde-haired boy stepped to the side just as Tsubaki's Naginata slammed into his previous position. He was forced to bring his legs up as the girl attempted to sweep his legs out from under him with the wooden pole of her weapon. As soon as his feet touched the ground, Naruto lashed out with a quick right-handed punch that sent the girl stumbling backwards. The blonde took advantage of her off-balance as he dashed behind the girl in a burst of speed before slamming the blunt end of his kunai into her temple, sending her crumbling to the ground. Seems like you and I are the only ones left, the big-breasted, lightning-wielding girl said as she stared at the Naruto. On the couch, Kaneko's anger was slowly building up as she saw the sensual expression on Akino's face. Her anger was quickly repressed when she saw a yellow blur cross her vision before her boyfriend's arm was placed around her shoulder. Her eyes widened when she looked to her left and saw Naruto sitting there grinning at her, yet the blonde-haired boy was also standing in the middle of the clubroom, facing off against Akino. They'd been fighting a clone this entire time. My base strength would be just a little too much for them, so I made a clone for them to fight with. Meanwhile, I went back to the shop and got you some cookies, Naruto said while handing the girl a small bag of cookies. Kaneko stared at the small, paper bag for a brief moment before a wide smile popped up on her face. She immediately hopped onto the boy's lap and opened her mouth, her actions immediately being met with a cookie as Naruto's free hand began to pet her head. This is the life, Kaneko thought to herself as she watched her boyfriend's clone confront Akino. Teach that big-breasted bimbo a lesson. This girl reminds me of Anko so much. From her body and that freaky lip-licking thing. Kami, I can practically smell her arousal. The clone thought to itself as he took another stride towards the girl while dodging another one of her lightning bolts. The girl's attacks were rather one-dimensional, though he could definitely sense some power behind them. She needed to add more variation to her attacks if she ever hoped to get better. Fufu, I'm going to have a lot of fu. Akino was interrupted when she felt a slight stinging sensation on her cheek. She reached her hand up to her cheek and felt the small cut that had seemingly formed on her face out of nowhere. She pulled her hand back and slowly began to lick at the blood that now covered her fingertips. Never take your eyes off your opponent, Akino heard from behind her before a massive wave of pain forced her into unconsciousness. From behind her, Naruto watched as the girl collapsed to the ground from his attack. My job here is done, the clone said before exploding in a puff of smoke, startling the two kings who were the only two devils still standing, excluding Kaneko of course. Now that all the action had died down, they could hear a gentle purring coming from the other side of the room. The two kings turned their heads and saw that Kaneko was purring while being fed cookies by the blonde boy that had seemingly just exploded into a cloud of smoke. I'm surprised neither of you stepped in to help your servants, though I suppose that is the nature of a king, so I shouldn't be surprised, just very disappointed, Naruto said while glaring at the two girls. Rias was too shocked to respond after seeing the majority of her peerage be taken down by a single opponent. Luckily for her, Sona stepped up to speak for the both of them. I could sense no ill intent coming from you since the first attack you made on Issei. You aimed to incapacitate with every hit. After you pulled that rather absurd attack on Rias' pawn, I knew that you were not going to do any long-lasting damage to anyone in the room. Plus, I wanted to test Tsubaki-chan's prowess against an opponent that was obviously stronger than her. You may see my actions as selfish, but I assure you, they were all calculated to assure my peerage would come out without too much harm. Sona rattled off while stepping towards the seated duo. Naruto stared at the black-haired girl for several seconds before releasing a small hum. And what if I was just luring you into a small sense of safety for my own amusement before brutally slaughtering every single person in this room? Sona froze when she felt a small prick on the side of her neck. Her eyes quickly scanned the room, and she could see that there was now a copy of the blonde-haired boy next to each member of the room. Each clone had a kunai in hand and was pointing the knife at the neck of each devil present. Even her fellow king was in danger, as a small droplet of blood dripped down the redhead's slender neck. Well, what would you do now? You have allowed all your allies to be defeated because you assumed I wasn't some trained assassin who was merely toying with you before killing you all. What do you do? Naruto said in a deathly serious tone. Sona found herself at a loss for words as she continued to look at the blonde. The once carefree and lax blonde had been replaced by a deadly and serious one. Even Kaneko seemed taken back since she had stopped in her purring to take in the situation. Well? Even tried to make a move and I could slit the throats of everyone in this room. Sona could feel herself begin to sweat a bit as she racked her brain in order to answer his question. She felt a bit more pressure being put on her neck as the clone behind her leaned more into the kunai. I do not know, Sona admitted while breaking eye contact with Naruto due to her own embarrassment. She hadn't accounted for that in her own mental assessment of the situation. To have the fact that she just endangered the life of some of her peerage was something that severely upset her. Naruto released a pleasant hum before snapping his fingers. All at once, every single one of the clones disappeared in a small puff of smoke. Sona immediately took a step away from Naruto while Rias moved closer to the citry air. Luckily for you, I have no reason to hurt any of you as of right now. Though I think you should teach your members a little more self-control. You never know exactly who you will encounter sometimes, Naruto stated while continuously stroking Kaneko's head. The other two conscious Co-Academy students looked on at the scene with a mixture of wariness, shock and just complete disbelief. The scene was soon interrupted when the Gremory clan seal flashed brightly on the floor of the club room. Rias looked on nervously at the seal while the rest of the conscious occupants of the room stepped away from it. Rias-chan! I got your message, your big brother is here to save you. Rias could only hold in a groan as her obsessive brother literally came flying out of the seal in an offensive stance. His eyes quickly scanned the room, taking note of the unconscious bodies scattered around along its floor, before finally locking onto Naruto. All the bravado coming from the older redhead immediately stopped as he began to gasp like a fish out of water. You! It's you! You're the one who took my money! Surzek yelled while pointing an accusing finger at Naruto. The teen merely waved at the man, causing him to physically recoil in shock. His head immediately turned to Rias as he began to rattle off a quick succession of questions. What is he doing here? Did he take your money too? Did he hurt you? You didn't bet anything against him, did you? He has Satan's luck, I swear he does, Surzek stated before collapsing to the ground with tears rolling down his cheeks. This time Rias couldn't hold in her groan as her older brother once again was embarrassing her. She had originally sent for him when she saw Naruto easily handling the majority of her peerage. She wanted to be sure that the issue would be handled just in case the boy attempted to turn on her or Sona. Now she was regretting even asking for the older man's help. Hello Lucifer-san, I'm up for that rematch if you're willing to give it another shot, Naruto said while smiling at the man. He had to hold in a chuckle as the red-headed man disappeared in a red blur and reappeared behind Rias, seemingly using his little sister as a shield against the shinobi. No! You stay away from me and my money. I refuse to lose any more to you, Surzek said before ducking back behind his sister. Sona had to stop herself from face-palming as she watched one of the strongest devils in existence hide behind his little sister in fear. Unfortunately, she wasn't too shocked due to how her own sister would act around her. The former citry heir was the very definition of childlike and her behavior only seemed to intensify whenever she was around Sona. Just thinking about her sister's behavior was sending shivers down the young girl's back. How do you know Surzek-san, Naruto-kun? Kaneko's voice stopped all activity in the room as everyone looked towards her. Rias had to hold herself back from slapping herself as she realized that Kaneko didn't know she went behind her back again. And now she had just brought in one of the few pieces of evidence that she had gone against her friend's wishes. He came to visit me in order to buy my shop. When I refused, he offered me to bet for it. Long story short, he lost a lot of money and I kept my shop. I had thought that something seemed a bit off with him, but I would have never thought that Mr. Lucifer would be this closely related to Rias-san. If looks could kill, Rias would find herself back in the underworld right now. Kaneko's once pleased gaze had turned deadly and sharp glare as she stared at Rias. Now Rias was the one who felt like hiding behind her sibling. The small Nekashu was gripping onto her boyfriend's leg with an enormous amount of strength and anger. If Naruto had been any other person than himself, his bones would be shattered into pieces right now. We're leaving now, Kaneko said before climbing off of Naruto's lap. The boy didn't even have a chance to protest as his grip was captured into a bone-crushing grip and he was dragged out of the club room. Did I mess up again? Sometimes Rias really hated brother's antics. Naruto hummed pleasantly to himself as he began to clean off the counters in his shop. It was late at night, and he had once again finished serving the last customer. Today had been a rather interesting day for him. After leaving the club room with Kaneko, he spent an hour or so calming the young girl down. Some heavy petting and sweets managed to calm the girl down. After sending the girl home, Naruto decided to open the shop for a late shift in order to capitalize on the late-night sugar addicts. It was now around about 1 in the morning, and it seemed like the last of his late-night customers had came and went. Naruto's attention was taken away from his cleaning when he heard a light scratching coming from outside his store. His eyes quickly jumped up and he was surprised to see a small black cat scratching against the entrance to his shop. You know that isn't a normal cat, right? Kurama spoke up as Naruto locked eyes with the cat. The creature was rather unassuming. In most cases, he would overlook the small creature, but warning bells were being set off by the car. Yes, normal cats don't usually have traces of senjutsu literally wafting from its form. Plus the amount of devil energy coming from her is ridiculous. I'm guessing that's not going to stop you from letting it in? Not at all. The fox could only chuckle at his partner's reply. Even though he was trapped in a completely different dimension, surrounded by supernatural beings and apparently even gods, Naruto was still the same old knucklehead ninja he was back in his academy days. Now what are you doing out here all by yourself? Naruto said while opening the door to his shop. The cat immediately dashed into the store before quickly making its way towards one of the many seats and jumping onto it. The cat then turned back towards Naruto before casually beginning to lick itself. Would you like a treat or something? Wait, I don't know if cats can even eat sweets. I know dogs can't eat chocolate. Does that mean cats can't eat sugar? I guess I'll give you some milk from the back. Naruto nodded to himself while making his way to the back of the store, completely missing the facepalm the cat performed on itself. The blonde-haired boy walked to the back of his shop and retrieved a small glass bottle of milk from the small fridge he had stored back there. A pleasant whistle began to travel through the shop as Naruto made his way back to the front of the store. Hey, raise some milk, Kitty-chan. I didn't know if you enjoyed regular, strawberry or chocolate, but I can go back if you prefer something. Naruto slowly trailed off as he stared at the stool where the black cat once sat. The seat was no longer occupied by a cat but by a human, a rather scantily clad woman. The cat was now a young woman with a voluptuous figure, long black hair with split bangs and hazel eyes with cat-like attire consisted of a black kimono, a yellow obi, a set of golden beads, and an ornately detailed headband. The kimono featured a red interior, and it seemed to open at her shoulders. The most interesting feature the girl had was the set of cat ears sitting on the girl's head. Told you that wasn't a normal cat. Not the time, Kurama. Naruto mentally yelled at his partner while staring the girl in her eyes. His own history with perverts and the fact that he was in a relationship made it possible for him to resist making eye contact with the girl's breast. The two large orbs of smooth flesh were basically being flung in his face, but the shinobi resisted. You wouldn't happen to have seen a black cat sitting in this chair a couple of seconds ago? If possible, the girl's smirk increased to even greater proportions while she swung her legs over the chair. If Naruto had looked down, he would have seen her breast jiggle within the loose confines of her dress. He may have even been able to see that the girl was currently going completely commando under that dress of hers. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. The real question is, how are you going to convince me to tell you? Naya, the girl said in a playfully seductive voice while placing a single hand on Naruto's chest. Naruto, very gently, grabbed the woman's wrist and removed the girl's hand from his body, earning himself a disappointed moan. Well, I have some milk for you. I guess I could make some sweets if you force my hand, Naruto said while handing the girl a bottle of milk. The girl looked at the bottle of milk for several seconds before slowly rising from her seat. She gently pushed away the offering arm before pressing herself against Naruto. The shinobi could now get an even greater feel for the woman's physique as she pressed her body against his. Every single one of the girl's curves could be felt by Naruto and was only separated from his own body by the thin dress the girl was wearing. Is this forcing your hand enough? Maybe I can get some of those sweets now, the girl said while slowly trailing her hand down Naruto's stomach. This time, Naruto's grip wasn't so gentle as he squeezed down on the girl's wrist, causing her to let out a hiss of pain. The girl's grin was wiped from her face as her eyes met Naruto's. I'm in a relationship and I'm pretty sure my partner wouldn't want you go any further than you already have. Now are you going to tell me why you were outside my shop or do I have to force it out of you the hard way? Naruto stated in a stern voice. The atmosphere of the shop immediately grew cold as both occupants fell into silence. Everything was completely still for several long seconds before the strange, black-haired girl bursted into action. The girl pushed off of Naruto with an abnormal amount of strength for someone of her size, causing the blonde to go sliding back several feet. While the boy recovered from the surprising display of strength, the next she drew a small seal in the air. Without any warning, black smoke quickly began pooling out from the floating seal and into the room, quickly filling it with its presence. I was surprised when I felt a surge of senjutsu near here. I thought that maybe my cute, little Shiro-chan had went and activated her legacy. Only for me to come to find out that it was actually you putting out all that pure energy. Naya and Naruto quickly caught his balance just as the black smoke reached him. The smoke quickly wrapped around the boy, it acting as a physical form as it lifted him up into the air. Seeing that the blonde was now captured, the girl took her time sauntering back towards him. So mind explaining to me how you know how to do senjutsu, and why you are around my Shiro-chan? The playfulness had left the girl's voice as she leveled a cold stare at Naruto's struggling form. The shinobi was attempting to break free from the black mist but seemed to be having no luck doing so. The more you struggle, the more I have to hurt you, cutie. Naya, another seal, appeared in the air as the mist seemed to tighten around Naruto, forcing a groan out of the blonde-haired boy. The girl was interrupted in her torture session when she felt a hand grab onto her ankle. She felt a strong pull on her ankle as her right leg was suddenly taken out from under her. A slight sense of dizziness overcame her, as she felt herself spinning around in the air for several seconds before suddenly being sent flying through the air. The foreground of her vision blurred as she went sent flying through air before she made a sudden and unexpected stop as she slammed into a brick wall. Thank Kami for shadow clones. They always fall for them, Naruto stated as he walked into the back room of his store. The room was outfitted with a wide variety of seals that worked to basically make sure everything that happened inside was kept inside. To an outsider's perspective, there was only a simple freezer and a couple of storage shelves. No one would be able to see the crumbling wall nor the Nico girl who was in said wall. Now that wasn't so nice, Naya, the girl said as she pushed herself out of the crumbling wall. Naruto closed the door behind himself, locking the two super-powered beings in the same room together. It wasn't nice of you to try and kill me either. Now I have some more questions for you. Who are you, who is Shiro-chan, and how much do you know about senjutsu? The girl's smile once again appeared on her face as Naruto fired off his questions. You still have to convince me, FO. The girl was silenced when she felt a slight prick on her neck. Not even a second later, several puffs of smoke surrounded her, each puff accompanied with the appearance of a clone. Each clone leveled a glare at her as they held knives to each vital point on her body. Naya, I guess no more playing around. Naruto nodded his head as the girl eyed his clones. The playful look in her eyes was still present, but Naruto could see that the girl was actually examining the copies. Whether it was out of plain curiosity or in an attempt to find a weakness, he could not figure out. My name is Kuroka and let's just say I'm on the run for being too adorable. The girl was interrupted when the clone standing behind her pressed its kunai harder against her neck, causing a thin cut to form. The Nekashu rolled her eyes before starting to speak once again. Fine, I'm an SS class devil outlaw. I'm one of the most wanted criminals in the underworld. I consider myself a master at the arts of senjutsu, Naya. And Shiro-chan is my little sister. Naruto stared at the girl after her short introduction for several seconds before letting out a small laugh. A look of confusion slowly crossed Kuroka's face as Naruto's laughter grew in volume. I'm sorry, but you're no master at senjutsu. I have no idea how, but you seem to be using a very bastardized version of senjutsu. Nature isn't rejecting you, but it's definitely not accepting you. A sage, a true master of senjutsu, is always in tune with our no master, Naruto said while pressing his hand to the floor. Kuroka watched in surprise as several small plants began to bloom from beneath the cracks of the floorboards. Several flowers and patches of grass sprang up underneath Kuroka's feet, causing her to let out a small giggle as it tickled her bare feet. As for Shiro-chan, I can only assume you mean Kaneko. The ears and senjutsu give it away a bit. I'm guessing you're the sister she was talking about, Naruto said as the clones surrounding Kuroka disappeared, freeing the young woman from captivity. The girl looked thankful to be free as she performed a small stretch, unknowingly pronouncing her assets to an even further extent in front of Naruto. Shiro-chan talks about me? How sweet, Naya. But yes, I've been tailing her for a little while and I was shocked to see that my little Amuro-chan found herself a boyfriend. Especially one so big, strong, and powerful, Kuroka said while sauntering towards Naruto. The girl let out another disappointed groan when Naruto's arm shot out and stopped her from even getting close to him. Naruto shot the girl a curious glance, earning a short giggle from her. Just need to make sure you were being loyal to my Shiro-chan, Naya. If you weren't, senjutsu master or not, I would have torn you limb from limb and used your ball sack as a cat toy, Kuroka said with a wide grin in her face, earning herself a sweat drop from the blonde shinobi. It's like Matatabi in human form, Kurama stated as Kuroka released another playful giggle. Naruto could only nod in agreement as the Nekisha seemed to return to her usual state. I almost forgot why I came here. I'm part of this little organization, Naya. My boss is very interested in you joining us. Just say the word and I'll take you right there. The woman stated while sticking out her hand. Naruto stared at the offered hand for several seconds before chuckling softly. You can tell your boss that if they are so interested in me joining, they can come meet me here. If they can't agree to that, well, they can count me out of any plans you and your group have for the future. Naruto said. Kuroka let out a disappointed meal at the rejection before muttering under her breath, fine. She won't like that, but I'll tell her it. Until we meet again, Foxy. Stay cute, Naya, the girl finished before disappearing in a small puff of smoke, leaving the blonde alone once again. Well, I can tell she is going to be troublesome in the future. Ophis, the infinite dragon god, was born from the chaos and nothingness of the universe. From the moment it took its first breath, all it knew was the silence of the world. And it enjoyed every single last second of that silence. It spent countless of years in that silence, and it wouldn't trade it away for anything, and it didn't seem like it would ever have to give that up. No one ever visited the dimensional gap. Anyone that somehow made their way into the dimension was usually destroyed instantly. Great Red seemed to be an exception to that rule. The dragon actually seemed to thrive in the turbulent environment. The dimensional gap was constantly filled with its boastful laughter as flew through the dimension. The whole experience had been rather surreal to the infinite dragon before the fact that someone had invaded its home had finally settled into her brain. The infinite dragon and the Great Red thus entered into combat. Ophis wanted its home and silence back to herself, while the Great Red wanted to continue doing its cool tricks without anyone watching him. For two beings of great and almost unimaginable powers, the argument seemed almost childish, but no one was there to point that fact out. The two dragons clashed over and over again, each battle ending in a tie. While it was a tie, it was technically a loss for Ophis as Great Red remained in its domain. This sequence of battles continued for decades until Ophis came to a sudden realization: it couldn't beat the Great Red. No matter how powerful it thought it was, its power could and would be met by the apocalyptic dragon. It would never regain the silence it had came to love at this rate. This forced Ophis to come up with a solution to her problem. From her many trips into outside of the dimensional gap, Ophis knew that there were powerful beings in existence besides itself. None as powerful as her, but still some were very powerful. If it managed to gather enough of these powerful beings under one banner, it could possibly beat or at least force Great Red out of the dimensional gap. And so, the Chaos Brigade was born. Ophis went about recruiting dozens of different creatures from each of the different factions. She even recruited humans who were the descendants of heroes. It had gotten to the point where their numbers had started to reach into the hundreds, but Ophis knew it was not enough. The Great Red was a being of immense power that could rival her own, and Ophis knew it could completely wipe out the Chaos Brigade if necessary. Great Red would be able to do the same if the group went into battle. Ophis needed more. It needed something greater to fight against the dragon, and something greater did appear. It literally ripped a hole through the dimensional gap before disappearing into the human world. But in that brief moment where the blur was in the gap, Ophis felt power. Unbelievable, overwhelming power that had actually frozen the infinite dragon in its tracks. That was power it needed. That was the power it needed to defeat Great Red and claim the dimensional gap to itself again. So it had sent several scouts out into the human world to search for it. For the first several months, the dragon and its scouts had absolutely no results. Ophis usually wasn't one for emotions, but anger was definitely present at the lack of results. The solution to all its problems had literally passed within a foot of it, and now that power seemed to be unfindable. Ophis had almost thrown a hissy fit, but had luckily been stopped when one of its best scouts brought some good news. The source of energy had been located, in Ko of all places. Ophis was very well aware of Ko. The place was a literal hub for supernatural creatures. Devils, angels, fallen angels, and even demons could be found wandering the city in broad daylight. How a war between the factions hadn't started in the middle of the city, Ophis would never know. That city was literally a melting pot for conflict, and thus, Ophis had sent Kuroka to go convince the source to join her cause. This was partly because of two reasons. The first was because Ophis wanted to get the annoying Nekishu away. Having to deal with the playful woman every single day had started to grate on Ophis' barely developed nerves. The second reason was that the girl was surprisingly good at convincing others to join the Chaos Brigade. Ophis didn't know how she did it, and it didn't want to know how. As long as the cat got the job done, Ophis would be satisfied with whatever method she used. So that's why, at the moment, Ophis found herself filled with an emotion that she had been starting to know as annoyance. The infinite dragon had taken the form of a cute, young girl with hip-length hair. The gothic Lolita-style clothing the dragon was wearing only added to her cuteness. What didn't add to the girl's cuteness was that she was actually a dragon of almost infinite power that could possibly bring about the apocalypse if she wanted. One would have to be very ignorant to look past this. Unfortunately for Kuroka, she did not have that amount of ignorance, so she was currently facing the full brunt of the dragon's agitation. He demanded you come see him, Naya. He was too powerful me for force here, so I had no choice. Kuroka stuttered out as Ophis' power slowly spread over her. The Nekashu didn't know if the dragon girl was doing it purposefully or not, but the power coming from the girl was actually starting to suffocate her. If I leave the gap, Great Red could try and do even more damage to my home. This is not something I want to do, Olfa stated while crossing her arms over her chest. Kuroka would have hugged the girl just out of the cuteness of the situation if she wasn't sure that the dragon would kill her for making such an action. Well, I don't think he's coming any other way. Olfa stood still for several seconds before releasing a sigh. Kuroka let out a relieved sigh of her own as the power coming from the girl finally settled down. Leave my home. Kuroka did not hesitate to follow that order as a hole in the dimensional gap opened up behind her. The Nekashu shouted a quick goodbye before diving head first into the rift in space, leaving the infinite dragon alone. Looks like I'll have to handle this myself. I shall convince this boy to join my cause and banish the Great Red, Olfa said to herself before disappearing from the gap in a bright flash of light. If only she realized that some things were easier said than done. A light whistle carried through the early morning air in the streets of Ko Town. Not many people were out during these early hours, but there was definitely one person walking down the streets of the town. This man had a wild mane of blonde hair with emerald green eyes. The most interesting feature about the man was the set of priest robes he wore. His lower half was covered in a pair of black jeans. His lips were pursed as a melodic tune escaped his mouth. It should be a bit closer. I hope I didn't show up too early. I really want to try some local sweets. The man muttered to himself before continuing his jaunty whistle. To the few citizens that were actually out and about at this time, the man definitely stood out. The priestly robes and the wild blonde hair made the man look slightly weird. He didn't care though, all he wanted was his sweets. Here we are, the man said with a wide smile on his face as he stopped in front of his store. His eyes went up and read the sign that stated Uzumaki's Sweets. He was happy to see the open sign being displayed in the front window. He could even see a man working behind the counter, even at these early hours. Time to taste these sweets. And with that, the man stepped into the shop. Naruto released yet another yawn as his eyes glanced up to his clock for what seemed like the dozenth time since he opened. Even though it had only been an hour, he was already anticipating leaving today. He was planning on closing early and meeting Kaneko after school to take the girl out on a date. He figured he needed to spend some quality time with the girl since she still seemed a little miffed out at Rias the last time he saw her. Hopefully a little time together would quell the last remnants of anger in the Nekashu. That energy source we felt early is closing in on us. It's not as large as the girls from last night or Surzex, but it's definitely up there. Kurama spoke out in Naruto's head. Earlier that morning, the fox and the boy had been startled awake when they felt a very pure energy source into their senses. The energy was basically the polar opposite of what he felt coming from the devils he had interacted with. While he would describe the devil's energy as dark, this energy was light. I've noticed. Now that the person is closer, I can get a clearer reading on their energy. Pure would be a very big understatement. The best way to describe it is cleansing, holy even. This must be an angel. Naruto mused to himself, and his kitsune partner. After discovering Kaneko's devil nature, Naruto had decided to do some research into the factions. Whether he wanted it to happen or not, he was involved with the supernatural world now. His girlfriend was involved in it, and by extension, so was he. After all, he always looked after his precious people. Naruto hummed to himself as the energy source came closer and closer. It seemed that whoever was the owner of this energy was heading for his shop. Whether that was to engage him or not, Naruto had yet to figure out. Though he was prepared to fight if necessary. That's our guy. Both the tailed beast and the shinobi immediately began to examine the man who had stopped in front of the shop. Their assumption of him being an angel seemed to be spot on if the man's priestly robes were anything to go by. The spiky blonde hair and the green eyes made the stranger stand out, even in the hectic streets of Kuo. Not much else could be deciphered from the man's appearance except for the small smile that was placed on his lips. I don't sense any ill intent from the man. Can angels even have killing intent? Naruto shook his head in amusement at his partner's question just as the man walked into his store. It was time for action, it seemed. Welcome to Uzumaki's Sweets, and congratulations on being the first customer of the day. Naruto finally spoke out loud. The man's smile only seemed to grow larger as he stepped further into the shop. His eyes closed as he took a deep inhale. His smile turned serene as he opened his eyes once again, revealing his sparkling eyes. Thank you for the pleasure of being first, my friend. Usually I do not wake up this early, but when I heard that this town had a shop dedicated to selling sweets, I just had to come myself, the man said while walking to the counter of the shop. His eyes swept over the display counters lined with rows and rows of desserts and candies. A small line of drool slowly dripped out of the man's mouth as his gaze grew more intense. It's always the powerful ones that have weird food habits. You humans have always been strange. The first Hokage had his sushi obsession. Mito obsessed over red bean cake, you have your ramen, and even this angel has an obsession with food. What is wrong with you people? Naruto chose to ignore his partner as he continued to stare at the drooling man. Not a problem at all. What can I get you for today? Everything is guaranteed to be made fresh. By this point, the man in the priest robes had his face pressed against the display case. The man's cheek was smushed against the clear glass, giving him a rather comical appearance. "I'll just have him one of everything, please." The sincerity in the man's voice was the only thing that stopped Naruto from kicking him out the shop immediately. No normal person just comes into the store and orders everything. "One of everything? Are you sure about that?" "Of course I am. I am not a man who jokes about his sweets. I want to taste single morsel of food you have available in this fine store." The man spoke with a gentle smile on his face. Naruto only hesitated for a brief second before walking to the back of his store. Seemed like this morning wasn't going to be as peaceful as he originally thought. Naruto watched as Delio released a loud belch after consuming the last dango stick. It had taken Naruto a full hour to prepare the entirety of his menu, with a little undercover help with his clones. And true to his word, the priestly man had eaten every single crumb of what had been cooked. The man's eating process was very meticulous and precise, the exact polar opposite of Naruto's own eating habit. Each sweet was studied with a trained eye and explored through the sense of smell before being consumed. The priest would take his time tasting the food before finally swallowing while releasing an appreciative hum. This process continued over the course of several hours until the man had finished tasting all of the food. During that time period, Naruto had begun talking to the man. He learned that the man's first name was Delio and he was what he would like to call a wandering priest. Apparently he traveled all around the world, offering blessings to anyone that would accept them. His passions included food, prayer, and the Bible. The shinobi would be lying if he said that he didn't enjoy the company of his fellow blonde. Even though the man seemed pretty devoted to his religions, he was pretty laid back. Most of the religious types that he had met around town had been somewhat stuck up when it came to having a regular conversation. "I have to say, Naruto-san, that I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of sweets you have provided me today. For such a small shop, you have an amazing sense of quality. I'll definitely have to take some home with me now," Delio said while leaning back in his seat. "Dear Kami, he wants more? How much can this man put away? Is this how I am when I'm eating ramen? Maybe I should cut back a little. Actually, never mind. I can't ever cut back on my precious ramen." Kurama released a groan as his partner once again started to fantasize about ramen. Why did he even try? "Luckily for you, I figured you would some more and I whipped up a couple of specialties for you to take with you," Naruto said as he reached under his counter before pulling out a large paper bag. The blonde-haired man happily accepted the bag full of treats with a wide grin on his face while sliding a small slip of paper to Naruto. "This check should cover everything I've eaten today. It's connected directly to the bank account of the Catholic Church, so don't worry about the amount. The airheads up there should be able to cover all the costs." Naruto glanced down at the check and had to stop himself from choking when he saw the amount of money written on the tiny sheet of paper. "Delio, this is way too much. I can't accept all of this from you." The blonde-haired man let out yet another smile while standing up from his chair. "Consider it a gift from the church for all the hard work you've been doing. It was nice meeting you, Naruto-kun. I hope we meet again," Delio said while offering his fellow blonde a two-finger salute. And with that, the man in the priest's robes walked out of the store and disappeared down the streets of Kuo. "Your meeting with the angel faction went much better than with the devil faction. Seems a bit stereotypical that an angel would be so much kinder than a devil." Naruto rolled his eyes at his partner's comment while walking to the front of the shop. No one had entered the shop during Delio's visit, leaving Naruto all to himself as he flipped the open sign to closed. "Closing so early? I just got paid what I would usually make in a week in a single day. I think it's okay to close up shop early. Plus I was already planning on leaving early to meet Kaneko." The blonde threw his apron back behind the counter before exiting the shop. Delio watched from his position in the sky as the blonde-haired teen began walking away from his shop. In his hand was a dango stick and behind him, a set of 10 pure white angel wings kept him up in the air. Naruto Uzumaki, better known as the Candy Sage in Heaven. He is indeed a very interesting person. Better yet, he knows how to make some good castella. Better get back before Michael throws another hissy fit. Can't wait until the children get a chance to taste some of this stuff, the man said to himself before disappearing in a bright flash of white light. Ophis was really beginning to hate coming in contact with other beings. Ever since she did, all she had been feeling was annoyance towards them. Great Red had annoyed her with his residency in her home, the members of the Cows Brigade annoyed her with their incompetence, and now the citizens of this town had annoyed her. It had been a total of 6 hours since the Infinite Dragon had arrived in Kuo. When she arrived in the small town, she came to a realization. She didn't know the exact location of the boy. She knew he was somewhere in this town, but where exactly was the question. She also realized her mistake of taking the form of a young girl several hours ago. "Now why don't you just come to Daddy so you and him can play a little bit?" Ophis let out a sigh at the man's insistence of him being her father. She was born from the infinite chaos that originally made up the entirety of the universe before the planets came into existence. The man looked to be well over 30 and had been following her for the past hour. He had managed to somehow lead the young girl down an alley where the two currently were. "You are clearly not my father, so I ask once more that you stop pestering me. If you do not stop, I will be forced to take severe actions against you," Ophis stated while staring at the man. Not a single word the girl said seemed to ring true with the man as he continued his approach towards her. Don't worry, I'll make sure to take care of you, the man stated before releasing a rather perverted giggle. Opha sighed before raising her palm towards the man. Humans are such an annoyance. A large snake made out of a writhing, dark energy shot out from Opha's hand and flew at the man. The poor, perverted bastard didn't even have time to scream before he was consumed whole by the snake. That man wasn't even worthy to be my father, the girl stated before exiting the alley. Seemed like the search would continue for the infinite dragon. You know that I could probably keep up with you at the speeds you're going, right? Kaneko said while straddling Naruto's back. The Nekasha was currently riding piggyback style on her boyfriend. She was rather surprised when school ended and her boyfriend had literally swept her off her feet and took off running. What type of boyfriend would I be if I allowed my girlfriend to walk through the forest? A weird one. A normal boyfriend wouldn't have a date in the middle of the forest. Well, I'm not exactly normal, am I? No, not at all. You know you love it. Naruto didn't get a reply to that one, causing the boy to laugh. Not even a second later, he felt a light tap on his upper back that almost sent the boy off balance. He looked over his shoulder and saw the girl looking away from him with an innocent look on her face. That look was quickly wiped off of her face when she felt Naruto's grip on her thigh tighten. The girl didn't even have time to scream before she suddenly swung off the boy's back and into the air. The ground grew further and further away from her as she flew higher and higher into the air. Kaneko finally found her breath just as she began to descend back to the ground. The devil began to release a long string of curses as the ground grew closer and closer. Just as Kaneko was about to hit the ground, a yellow blur jumped through the air and caught the girl. The two landed in a clearing, completely free from harm. You're the worst, Kaneko said as Naruto walked with her in his arms. The blonde-haired boy only chuckled at the girl's comment while he walked to the center of the clearing. Stop being mad at me and look around. Surprisingly, Kaneko listened to him and actually began looking around the clearing. Now that her mind wasn't clouded with mock anger towards her boyfriend, she was able to see and sense the beauty of the clearing. Every single blade of grass shone a bright, incandescent emerald green. A soft breeze rolled slowly through the clearing, slightly blowing the two occupants' hair. The trees surrounding the clearing looked tall and healthy. Their brown barks were looked to be untouched by mankind, and their foliage was thick. The sun's presence was warm but not too overbearing as it hung lazily over the center of the clearing. The air, Kaneko said softly as she took another breath. The air was filled with such a comforting presence. It felt like her whole body was wrapped in a gentle hug, and she was being cradled by Mother Nature herself. This is the true power of Senjutsu. This is pure nature chakra. Naruto watched with a small smile on his face as Kaneko continued to look around the clearing. Nature truly was breathtaking when you wiped away all of the taint that had collected on it. You did this with Senjutsu? The girl said as she turned towards him. Naruto gave a short nod before snapping his fingers. Kaneko jumped slightly when a puff of smoke erupted next to her. She looked down, and her jaw almost dropped to the floor when she saw what had appeared next to her. Laying on a picnic blanket, an entire buffet worth of Kaneko's favorite food shone majestically. Everything from cheesecake to deep-fried donuts were present in front of her, and I did this with my bare hands. I think my bare hands are just slightly bet. Naruto didn't even get to finish his sentence before he found Kaneko's lips pressed against his own as the girl latched onto the front of his body. The blonde boy didn't hesitate to return the kiss as he gently lowered the both of them to the ground. The two stayed in the embrace for almost a full minute before Naruto finally separated. As much as I was enjoying that, I don't want anything going to waste. So let's dig in. Kaneko didn't need to be told twice as she grabbed the closest cookie next to her and began to munch on it. Naruto grabbed himself a bowl of mochi and began digging in. The couple happily ate under the sunlight, completely unaware of how hectic their lives would soon get. Hey little girl, are you lost? Do you know where your parents are? Someone so young shouldn't be out so late. I am not young, I am infinitely older than you. I was born within the chaos of the universe, so I have no parents. Now leave me be. Now is not the time for make-believe or playtime. It's already dark and I'm sure your parents are worried and searching for you. I will slay you if you do not leave my presence. You shouldn't talk to adults like that, little girl. I'm sure your parents would scold you for doing that. Now come with me so we can find your parents, or at least get you somewhere safe for the night. The policeman said before turning around and attempting to grab Opha's hand. The man was surprised when he grabbed nothing. He turned his head around and saw that the little girl was already halfway down the street. Hey! Get back! Opha twisted around as her upper body began to morph. The policeman stared in shock as the upper torso of the girl transformed into a grotesque dragon-like monster made of writhing snakes. The monster stared at the office for several seconds before releasing a horrendous roar that literally blew the man onto his back. The officer's shock only escalated as the monster quickly reverted back to the young girl. I spared you. Leave me before I change my mind. The officer scrambled up to his feet, only giving the girl a mere glance before running in the opposite direction. Opha watched him with a stoic look on her face before turning away. I'm really starting to detest humans. Kaneko's light purring drifted through the cool, nighttime air. The girl's head was placed on her boyfriend's chest while the rest of her body laid sprawled over the picnic blanket. The early moonlight shined down on the two as Naruto's hand gently stroked Kaniko's head. Kaniko's skin seemed to glow as the moonlight illuminated it. The couple seemed at peace as they laid surrounded by empty food containers and plates. The moment of peace was interrupted when a red summoning seal appeared on Kaniko's hand. A scowl instantly appeared on the girl's face as she recognized the Gremory seal that had implanted on her. It looked as if the girl was about to dismiss it but was stopped by Naruto. She could really need your help. I know you're angry with her, but you should never leave your friends behind. Kaniko's scowl remained for several seconds before it dispersed with a soft sigh. I'm still angry with her, the girl stated as she rose from her rather comfortable position. Naruto rose with her and led the girl off the small, plaid blanket. The former shinobi wrapped the girl in a small hug that helped to wipe away the tension in her shoulder. I know, but just try to get through it. You don't want to lose a childhood friend because of a misunderstanding or anything. Try to talk it out. Kaniko rolled her eyes but nodded anyways as a red seal circle appeared under her. Naruto stepped away from the girl as the red light grew brighter and brighter. The light grew brighter and brighter until Naruto couldn't even see Kaniko anymore. With one final flash, the girl disappeared from the clearing. You know it's a bit that you've been spying on a bunch of teenagers in the middle of the forest during the night, Naruto said as the picnic blanket and all the dishes disappeared in a puff of smoke. Silence was the only thing that greeted the shinobi, causing him to sigh. With a quick flick of his wrist, 3 kunai appeared in his hand. The kunai were sent flying through the air at inhuman speeds towards the tree line. Not even a second later, a loud yelp rang through the clearing. That's not how you're supposed to greet someone, you know? A voice spoke out from the trees. Naruto rolled his eyes before summoning another round of kunai into his hand. Spying on someone isn't the proper way to greet someone either. Now come out of the trees before I make sure to hit somewhere a lot more painful. Several tense seconds passed before Naruto saw a figure slowly fly into the air. The first thing Naruto noticed was the 12 midnight black wings that supported the man in the air. The man's golden bangs contrasted with the rest of his black hair. His red trench coat fluttered softly in the air. Nice to meet you, oh wise sage. Why don't we have a quick chat? Can't we just talk it out? I like solving my problems with my words, not my fist. You're the one who attacked me first. I haven't even attacked yet. You make a good point. Naruto released a frustrated groan at the man's behavior. It had been a total of 3 minutes since he met the man, and Naruto could confidently say that he was insane. The man claimed to be a pacifist yet came out of nowhere and started to attack him. The blonde shinobi honestly didn't want to fight in the clearing. He had just cleansed the area using his chakra and didn't want to ruin it again. The man in front of him, however, had no qualms when it came to throwing around giant constructs of light energy. Several trees had already fallen to the man's attack, and Naruto was sure more would have been damaged if he hadn't placed an impromptu barrier around the area. I swear if you attack one more time, I will put you down. The winged man seemed to honestly think the situation through before a ball of light energy quickly formed in his hand. The man raised his arm up to the sky as the ball grew larger and larger. How about no? The man said before the ball seemed to reach the apex of its growth. A wide smile appeared on the man's face as he threw his hands down, sending the ball of energy careening towards the ground. Or that would have happened if Naruto hadn't stopped the man. The blonde shinobi flashed behind the winged man and slapped the man on his back. The fallen angel let out a loud yell as his arms and legs slapped together. His wings went limp as he fell straight to the ground. The blonde behind him exploded in a puff of smoke as the man smacked face first into the ground. The real Naruto walked over from his position on the forest floor to the squirming man. A small seal tag was glowing on the man's back. Can't we talk this out? The man said as Naruto stared down at the man before raising his foot. The fallen angel attempted to scream but was silenced when Naruto's foot slammed into his head, sending him into unconsciousness. When Kaniko felt herself being summoned, she had expected a lot of things. She had expected a fight against a stray devil. She had expected to be confronted by Akino and Rias. She had even expected to have to fight against the 2 girls. What she didn't expect was to appear in Rias' room with the girl being half naked. The girl's cheeks and eyes were bright red as she stared out her bedside window. The girl didn't bother to cover her modesty as the Nekashu appeared. I'm glad you showed up, Kaniko-chan, the red-haired girl said while turning her head towards the younger girl. Kaniko's face stayed stoic as the girl rose from her position on the bed and slowly walked towards her. I know recently we haven't seen eye to eye. We've been arguing and fighting, and I just would like to apologize for that. Kaniko's mask of stoicism finally broke at the girl's apology. She watched as the girl's head dropped towards the ground. Ria's body began to shudder as the red-headed girl released several whimpers. I know I haven't been a good friend. I just wanted to protect you. We've been so close, ever since we've been children, and when it started to feel like we weren't anymore, I just acted. With everything that had been going on, Razor, the clan, the fallen angels, I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't mean to upset you. I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, I just wanted to protect you, Shiro-chan. Kaniko froze as the girl in front of her spoke her true name. She hadn't been called that name in years. That name brought up so many painful memories and experiences that she had tried so hard to repress. All those memories were now resurfacing and assaulting the small girl's mind. All those memories stopped when Kaneko felt a pair of arms wrap around her body. She looked down and saw the Gremry heiress enveloping her in a hug. The girl's cheeks were red and streaming with tears as the girl shuddered continuously. "I'm so sorry, can you please forgive me?" Rias muttered while clinging on to the smaller girl. Kaneko stood there, frozen in shock as her king begged for her forgiveness. She had grown up with this girl and she could use a lot of words to describe the Gremry clan member. Prideful, selfish, mischievous, manipulative, those were words she would use to describe the girl at times. The heiress had a stubborn streak a mile long and hated losing or being proven wrong. So to have that same stubborn, selfish little girl that she had grown up now be hugging her while begging for forgiveness, it was a very experience. Kaneko was snapped out of her musings when Ria's shuddering grew to an even greater level. The girl was now freely crying into the younger girl's shoulder. Kaneko began to find it harder and harder to stay mad at the girl as the tears continued to come out. The last bit of her resentment left as the girl collapsed onto her knees. Kaneko let out a small sigh before slowly wrapping her arms around the girl. The two remained in the embrace for several long minutes while Ria's crying slowly toned down. After a full 10 minutes, Rias slowly separated from the embrace while looking the Nekashu in the eye. "Does this mean you forgive me?" Kaneko had to release yet another sigh when she saw the amount of hope and wanting in the girl's eyes. The young Nekashu rolled her eyes before speaking. "Yes, I forgive you. Just please stop crying." Ria's face instantly split into a wide grin as she enveloped the younger girl in a much larger and more compassionate hug. Kaneko could only sigh once again and bear the brunt of the girl's excitement. "I wonder what Naruto is doing right now. I wonder if he thinks I made the right decision. Look, I really am a peaceful guy. I was just testing you out, man." Naruto groaned as the blonde-haired man continued to make excuses. The winged man was bound against a large oak tree while Naruto sat not too far away from him. Naruto had retreated deeper into the forest after knocking the man out. It turns out that the man wasn't actually knocked out, he was merely faking it. Naruto had first thought the man was just making excuses for being knocked out so easily, but after the supposed angel revealed his name and origin, the man's claims started to have some ground to stand on. This man claimed to be Azazel. Just that name alone meant something to Naruto. The blonde-haired shinobi had read parts of the Bible and knew the Azazel was commonly referred to as a fallen angel. The man's black wings and crazed personality seemed to be a fit for the title Fallen Angel. It was the second part of the man's introduction that made Naruto groan. Apparently Azazel was the governor of the entirety of the fallen angel population. On top of that, he was also the supreme leader of a group made from fallen angels, exiled church members and something called a sacred gear user. Testing me for what? I haven't done anything to alert any supernaturals of my presence. At this, Naruto stopped his pacing. He turned to the tied-up man and began to stare at him intensely, causing Azazel to roll his eyes. "It wasn't anything you did per se, more like how you came in." Now it was Naruto's turn to raise an eyebrow. "Oh, don't play dumb, it's obvious you are not of this world. You don't reek of devil taint, and you don't seem like an uptight, breast-hating angel. I would know if you were a fallen angel, and if you were a descendant of a hero, I would be able to see your lineage just from your appearance. Plus, when you entered this world, you released a lot of energy. I wouldn't be surprised if every single faction is on your ass right now." Naruto released a frustrated groan as he collapsed dramatically to the ground. The fallen angel watched curiously as the boy laid completely still on his back. "Is what he's saying is true?" Naruto mentally asked his kitsune partner. The teenage boy waited several seconds for response only to hear light snores. The shinobi wanted to scream out in frustration as his partner's snore continued to ring clear in his head. "Forget about that loser, I can help you." Naruto almost jumped up in shock as a new voice spoke in his head. At first, he didn't recognize the slightly slurred and crazed tone, but after several seconds of recognition, it finally clicked. "Shikaku? The one and only. Old brother is taking a nap because he's a lazy jackass, so the amazing Shikaku will be helping you today." Naruto had to hold in a chuckle from the Biju's wild talk, causing Azazel to shot him a curious glance. "Shut your damn mouth and be quiet. People are attempting to sleep in here." Naruto's shock was reawakened when he heard yet another voice rang out in his head. It only took a split second for the boy to recognize this voice as it began to engage in an argument with the one-tailed beast. "You stay out of this, son. No one wants your red ass here anyway. Why don't you go back to eating your bananas, you dumb monkey?" Naruto could feel his skin began to heat up as Son's anger became more and more intense. "Shut your sand-filled mouth, you crazy overgrown rat. I will not be insulted by anyone, especially you. Try coming back and talking to me when you have a grip on reality." "Hey! Imperfectly sane. My outlook on the world is just a lot more unique than how you view it, Sonny." Naruto wanted to laugh at the nickname given to the five-tailed beast, but he was pretty sure doing that would only fuel the Biju's anger. Instead, he continued to listen to the two brothers argue and bicker. "Don't you dare call me that name. I'll turn you into a damn sandbox if you say it again. Sonny, Sonny, hey Sonny, do you like your eggs sunny side up? Do you like the summer because it's always sunny?" How muc the one-tailed beast was interrupted when Son released a loud battle cry. Naruto couldn't see what was going on, but from the sounds coming from the two, he could only guess the two were now wrestling with each other. Get your hand out of my stomach, you pervert. That doesn't even make any sense. How about you stop becoming intangible, you dirty sand rat? And with that, the wrestling began anew. Neither one seemed to be actually attempting to do any lasting damage, as they were just using their physical strength. Sony seemed to have the upper hand if Shikaka's screams were anything to go by. Meh, my brothers can be so troublesome. Yet again, a new voice spoke out inside Naruto's mind. This new voice had a noticeably feminine tone to it. Is that you, Matatabi-chan? In the background, a loud series of crashes could be heard as the two Bijou continued to wrestle. The two-tailed beast let out a small sigh before addressing her container. Yes, it's me. I heard my siblings arguing down here and wanted to see what the big issue was. I wasn't too surprised to see the two arguing like little kids. A loud screech reached Naruto's ears. Sony's laughter could be heard very shortly after the screech. Well, while you are here, can you do a quick scan of my body? Apparently I've been leaving a trail of my chakra around that's making it pretty hard to stay hidden in the city. The cat-like being let out a thoughtful hum before going quiet for several seconds. All Naruto could hear was the sounds of destruction being created by the rampaging Bijou in the background. This man is right. A small amount of excess chakra has been leaking from you. Normally, in our world, this would go completely unnoticed. Large amounts of chakra was constantly being pushed into the air every single second of the day. Every single living being had chakra back in our world. Here, things are different. Chakra is nowhere near as prominent. Even the smallest traces of it stand out. Anyone that knows of chakra and knows how to sense it could possibly track you and find you if given enough time. Naruto mentally cursed at the new information. This would make staying hidden much harder to do. I'll deal with that after I finish with this guy. Thanks Masai-chan for the info. Not a problem at all, Naruto-kun. If you need me, I'll be disciplining these two for waking me up. Naruto had to hold in another round of laughter as the cat released a loud battle cry and jumped into the fray. A new bout of screams filled Naruto's mindscape as Matabi began to beat her siblings. And people have the nerve to call me crazy. Naruto was snapped out of his small trance by the fallen angel's voice. The blonde-haired shinobi rolled his eyes at the comment while walking towards the fallen angel. So Azazel. You have my attention now. What do you want? The man's face slowly morphed into a small smile as he looked the blonde boy in the eye. All I want is a fishing partner and some nice conversations. Ophi's eyes scanned over the destroyed section of the forest. A large section of trees had been completely wiped from existence. Huge chunks of the earth were gone. Giant gashes were cut into the remaining trees while a multitude of misplaced branches and leaves were scattered around the small clearing. He was here, I can sense him. That same energy. The infinite dragon said to herself as she examined the clearing. The small girl was so caught up in her examination of the clearing that she didn't notice the small herd of deer that had wandered into the clearing. The deer had noticed her though as they slowly made their way up to the powerful being. Ophis looked down at her hip when she felt a small prod on it. She was slightly surprised to see a young buck poking its nose against her leg. The dragon gave a small scoff before redirecting her attention back at the clearing. The young deer didn't seem to get the message as it continued to push its head against Ophis. The dragon let out a small sigh before raising its hand. The deer watched as the petite hand went up to the sky before quickly descending towards it. A loud crack spread through the clearing as the limp body of the deer went sailing across the clearing. Ophis watched as the carcass slammed into one of the remaining trees in the clearing before falling to the ground. It should have went away, the young girl said as she turned to leave the clearing and continue her journey. She was stopped, however, when she heard a loud series of growling. The girl's head turned and she was unexcited to see a small herd of deer angrily growling at her. It seemed that the death of one of their children had angered the herd. Each one of their deer were breathing heavily while lowering their antlers towards Ophi's. Do not make me kill you as well. The deer paid no attention to the girl's word as they charged at her. Ophis released a sigh as a portion of her powers manifested in her hands. So troublesome. And with that, the clearing exploded in a large blast of dark energy. There's a lot of things going on in this world that you are unaware of. A lot of moves going on in the background that may or may not involve you in the future, Azazel said casually while sending his fishing reel into the water. The blonde shinobi and the fallen angel were sitting in a simple wooden boat that was floating aimlessly in what looked to be a large lake. Naruto, after several minutes of inner debate, had decided to let go of the man and go fishing. The boy was sure he could restrain the man if he attempted to do anything tricky, plus he was curious on what information the man held. Well, that's rather obvious. I didn't expect this world to be filled with devils, angels and fallen angels. I'm only just hitting the surface on all of this. I need more information, the blonde stated with a clear amount of agitation in his voice. As a shinobi who had been on his fair share of missions gone bad, Naruto knew that having information was key, no matter what situation you were going into. His mission in Wave was a prime example for that. Tazuna didn't tell Team 7 that he was being hunted down by Gato and Kakashi, Sasuke, Sakura and even himself had almost died several times during that mission. Because of the lack of information, Team 7 went in underpowered and completely unprepared. And that almost cost them their lives. I want you to tell me everything you know. I need to know. Azazel's eyes narrowed while the smile on his face grew. Naruto could already sense the man's intention before a word even left the fallen angel's lips. I want you to work with. No. Azazel's smile immediately fell from his face at the denial of his request. The grown man crossed his arms and began to pout, giving him a rather strange appearance. You didn't even let me to finish my sentence. Naruto crossed his own arms as he gave the fallen angel a stern stare. If it involves working with you and your faction, my answer is no. I'm still sure I can't completely trust you, and I know for sure that you have some ulterior motives. Your body language literally screams it. Azazel's pouting reached even higher levels at the biting remark. Naruto had to hold in a shiver at the sight of a grown man whining and pouting like a child. I'm a good guy, I swear. After all, I was an angel. I was made to be good, was the key word. You're no longer an angel. I read up on fallen angels. You guys lose your status as holy beings when you indulge in sin. I wonder what sin made you fall. Did you kill someone, steal something important? Stealing? Being envious? Azazel's pouting disappeared at Naruto's questioning. A dark look covered the man's face as he began to chuckle manically. I am one of the original fallen angel. My fall had an aftershock that was felt through the entirety of the seven heavens. My sin was so great that I was one of the first that God made fall. My sin was. Naruto gently leaned in as the man gave a small pause. Curiosity had claimed the boy at the fallen angel's dramatic tone. I coveted the very thing no angel ever should. Breast. Wonderful, fluffy, meaty, silky, jiggly breast. My love and want for breast far surpassed anything that my former holy nature could contain. I knew that each handful of breast held an almost infinite amount of possibilities and power that was just waiting to be unlocked. God knew this as well and made me fall. That bastard. The blonde shinobi stared at the dark-haired man in silence for several seconds. Azazel seemed to be completely wrapped up in his own speech as the man didn't see the younger male walking towards him with his arm pulled back. He didn't even sense him when Naruto was standing only a foot away. He did sense him, however, when Naruto slapped him upside the head, sending the fallen angel down to the ground. The man's mad rambling about breast was now being silenced by the wonderful piece of ground that had found its way into his mouth. Naruto was standing above the man with an agitated look on his face while staring down at the perverted angel. I think I was cursed since birth by Kami to be surrounded by perverts. I can never get away from them. Naruto mumbled to himself as the man below him started to mumble about breast while slowly climbing to his feet. Azazel's ascension was brought to a halt when Naruto's foot slammed into his back, sending him face first into the ground once again. I see you are one of the breast haters. You are no better than God himself. He didn't understand my love for breast and made me fall. Now you have done the same. You are all terrible. The man sprung up to his feet and shouted at the blonde-haired boy while pointing an accusing finger. Naruto gave the man a deadpan look before slapping the finger away. I can no longer take you seriously. I don't even know how you're a leader of anything with that type of behavior, Eroda Tenchi. Don't call me that. I am a well-respected general of the fallen angel army, and my name is feared by both devil and angel kind. You should call me Azazel or Azazel-sama if you want to impress me. I think I'll stick with Eroda Tenchi. Don't call me TH. Is Eroda Tenchi getting upset? Listen here, you BR. Eroda Tenchi, you agitation is showing you, perv. I will key. Calm your nerves, Eroda Tenchi. I'm just messing with you. You don't have to hide your perversion around me. If looks could kill, Naruto would be dead 9 times over as he continued to play on the fallen angel's nerves. The man's eyes were dangerously narrowed as they were aimed at the snickering blonde. If you're finished with your jokes, maybe we can get back to the main topic. My answer is still no, Eroda Tenchi. Damn you BR. The man suddenly froze as a large energy wave road washed over him. Naruto froze as well as his sensing abilities picked up on the energy as well. The energy was originated from the spot where he first encountered the fallen angel in front of him. It was strong and very dark, not the corrupted darkness that the fallen angels had or the type that the devil had, but a numbing and all-consuming darkness that he had never felt before. The dragon Naruto's head turned back to the Grigori general as the man let out a small mumble. The playfulness had drained from the man's face as he looked off into the distance with a serious look etched on his face. A dragon? Azazel turned towards the blonde-haired boy while nodding his head. This is part of what I meant when I said there are things going on in this world that may shock you. There's a being in this world called the Infinite Dragon. No one knows for sure, but it's rumored that the dragon has been in existence since the creation of this world. Its powers are unrivaled by any human, devil, angel, or fallen angel. It usually lives in the gap that separates the different dimensions of this universe, but for some reason, it's here now. Sounds pretty interesting. Azazel's head snapped back towards the blonde with an incredulous look on his face. Did you hear anything I just said? Even I wouldn't be able to last long against that beast. Didn't I just beat you in a battle? The shinobi pointed out. I let myself get captured so I could get closer to you and sway you to my side, of course. Naruto's deadpan look made it rather obvious to the fallen angel that he didn't believe the older man. Azazel let off a small pout at the blonde's face before turning away from him, causing the blonde to let out an agitated sigh. Well, while you sit here and mope, I'll be going to this infinite dragon. Someone has to make sure that this dragon doesn't destroy anything. Before Azazel could say anything, the blonde boy flashed away from the boat, sending the small, wooden watercraft tipping over, which sent the fallen angel into the cold waters below. The fallen angel splashed wildly in the water for several seconds before finding a small grip on turned-over boat to haul himself up with. I can already tell I'm going to hate that brat. You are definitely not what I expected out of a dragon. Naruto's voice was quite clear in the small forest clearing. The crisp, nighttime air blew softly against the blonde-haired boy's form. He was standing completely upright as he faced his future opponent. I could say the same about you, Ophice frostily said while staring at the shinobi. A mere 10 meters separated the duo as they stood in the same clearing that the brutal slaughtering of the deer had taken place, a fact that Naruto was slowly becoming aware of. Evidence of the killing could be seen in the random splotches of blood and flesh that were splattered on the tree trunks and the ground. So you are indeed the infinite dragon god, nice to finally meet ya. The chippy tone in the teen's voice threw Ophice for a slight loop. Wasn't this the same boy who had been running from her for the past several days? Why did he sound so happy? Nice to meet you as well, the young girl said hesitantly. Naruto nodded at the greeting before taking a look around the clearing. His eyes immediately locked on to the blood splatters that could be seen clearly in the night. So, you mind telling me what happened here? Seemed like someone made quite a mess, Naruto said while placing both his hands behind his neck. Ophice stared strangely at the boy for a mere second before indulging in his request. I merely got rid of an annoyance. However, I grow tired of this banter. I came here with a purpose, and that purpose does not include this mindless talking. Ophice's voice was frost-like in tone as she stared down the boy in front of her. His lackadaisical demeanor did not shift in slightest by the harsh tone used by the dragon. If anything, the shinobi seemed to be amused by the girl's tone. Oh, is that true? Well, why don't you tell me what this purpose of yours is? The light-hearted tone used by the boy lit a tiny spark of irritation inside Ophice's mind. He still wasn't taking her seriously. My home has been invaded by a pest going by the name of the Great Red. I require your assistance in driving this beast from the dimensional gap. In return for your services, I will reward with a great power that will allow you to rival a god. Ophice finished off by flaring a bit of her power. Naruto stared silently at the girl for several seconds before unfolding his hands from behind his head. The boy's smile grew softer as his eyes locked with Ophice. Nah, I'll pass. The casual tone and smile that the boy had honestly made Ophice doubt he heard him correctly. She honestly hadn't expected for the boy to be denied. I warn you, if you refuse I will have to kill you. So I ask once again, will you join me in my conquest to banish Great Red from the dimensional gap? My answer is still nope. Anger at the denial began to slowly boil inside the dragon as she looked on the lax blonde. Tiny wisps of her power began to flow around her form as her self-control began to wane. Very well. If that's the decision you have made, so be it. Ophice casually raised her arm as a dark ball of energy formed in her hand. Naruto had no time to even examine the foreign energy before a small snake exited the ball and came shooting towards the blonde. The speed at which the snake was traveling at was enough to even surprise the blonde-haired shinobi. Fortunately for his health, he managed to quickly get over his astonishment and dodged the agile reptile by sidestepping the attack. Unseen by the blonde, the snake quickly turned towards the blonde's back in midair once the blonde dodged its initial assault. The creature released a sort of strangled hiss from its mouth before flying at Naruto's neck and sinking its teeth into it. Ophice watched in a mixture of boredom and slight disappointment as the blonde began to writhe and scream in pain. The boy's skin began to crack and rip apart as his body failed to contain the almost limitless power of the infinite dragon god. The blonde attempted to rip and tear at his skin as more and more the power poured into its body. I must now restart my search. How troublesome. Ophice muttered as the boy's body exploded in a large mass of black snakes that slowly slithered their way back to their master. The girl was so sure of her victory that she didn't even notice that the same boy that she had just killed was now standing behind her. She quickly became aware of this fact when Naruto's fist slammed into her jaw. Now Naruto knew that he wasn't the physically strongest person in his world. Rock Lee, Guy, Kisame, B and A were all perfect examples of shinobi who, in his base form, could utterly humiliate him in a strength contest. They niche with strength and they mastered that aspect of combat to AT, but that didn't mean he was weak by any measure when he wasn't in his 6 Sage Paths mode, using Kurama's chakra or accessing senjutsu. His speed and strength were still ranked in the level of a Kage. That's why the blonde was very surprised when the girl in front of him didn't even flinch when his fist impacted against her cheek. If anything, the girl seemed to actually be relieved that he was alive and fighting back. I'm glad to see you're at least making this somewhat interesting, the girl muttered as Naruto jumped away from her body. Azazel's warning was repeating itself in Naruto's head as the small girl casually turned towards the boy and began to look him up and down. How did you manage to avoid my first attack? My snake detected no abnormalities when it bit into you. Oh, it's really a lot simpler than you would imagine. First, you simply Mole Ophice's focus was taken off the boy when she felt another force slam into her cheek. This time, the force was much stronger, strong enough to actually lift the girl from off of her feet. The dragon god's feet left the ground as she went sent flying across the clearing and slamming headfirst through a tree. That's gonna get her angry. That's gonna get her very, very angry. Naruto muttered to himself as he felt a buildup of the same dark energy come from near the broken tree. Not even a second later, the remnants of the tree exploded into a countless number of wooden shards as Ophis rose back onto her feet. A dark bruise that was quickly healing could be seen on the girl's face alongside a small grin. A small amount of amusement could be seen dancing along the girl's lips as she focused her stare on the blonde boy. "You're one of the few people who have actually managed to harm me, even if it's in this weak form. You should feel proud of that." The energy surrounding Ophis grew more intense as she took several short strides towards the blonde. Naruto quickly summoned several kunai in his hand and sent them flying towards the girl. The shinobi was met with immediate disappointment as he watched his kunai dissolve on contact with the energy. "Better make sure I avoid that," Naruto muttered to himself as a large snake manifested itself from out of Ophis' energy. The snake leveled its head towards Naruto, shooting a dark gaze at the boy. Its eyes were glowing red as it wrapped itself around the body of its owner. It's like if Orochimaru had a daughter with a creepy dragon. Definitely not a good combination. The snake released a loud screech into the nighttime air before charging towards Naruto. The snake's speed was almost blinding as it reached the boy in under a second. The snake unhinged its jaw before snapping it shut around the shinobi, or what was actually a log. Unseen by the snake, Naruto once again escaped the creature's wrath with a quick use of the replacement technique. Ophis' attention was quickly brought towards the ground when she heard several thumps beneath her. Her eyes immediately fell upon the bladed weapons that had a strange piece of paper wrapped around it. The piece of paper sizzled as it slowly ate itself up. Before the girl could finish her sentence, the handmade paper tag exploded in a brilliant fireball. Naruto, from his position almost 100 yards away, whistled appreciatively as the giant flame reached its way up towards the sky. "May have overdone it a bit with those explosive tags," Naruto said as the flames continued to reach higher and higher into the sky. He had taken out a small portion of the forest with that explosion. Think otherwise. Naruto's eyes widened dramatically when he heard a feminine voice behind him. Before he could even react, he felt a strong force wrap around his body. The teen had to hold in a scream as he felt his body begin to suddenly burn. "We're going somewhere where you can't run. I need to see your full capabilities," Ophis said, completely unharmed from his last attack, as she looked upon her captured prey. The snake construct she made earlier had wrapped its body around the blonde and was constricting the boy's movement. Before his very eyes, Naruto watched as the air began to distort. The distortion started off small, almost unnoticeable at first, but quickly grew larger and larger. Before long, the air was rippling violently as if it was attempting to rip itself apart. The process continued for several seconds before everything in the clearing grew still. Without warning, a large portal ripped itself into existence in the middle of the clearing. Naruto didn't even manage to take a good look at the rip in time and space before he found himself thrust face first into it. "You won't be able to run from me here. This is my home," Ophis muttered to herself before stepping into the portal. The tear closed up after her, leaving the clearing in silence once again. "I feel like Guy just body slammed me into the Hokage monument." The blonde released a groan as he slowly picked himself up off the ground. While he was pulling himself off of the strange material, he noticed the telltale signs of his tailed beast mode surrounding him. "I don't remember activating this." "That's because I did it for you." A small smile popped on Naruto's face when he heard the voice of his partner ring out in his head. "I'm glad to see you're awake, sleeping beauty. I was beginning to wonder if you just went up and died in your sleep. Whatever. I'm glad to see you still need me to help you fight your battles. What in the hell did you get yourself into now? Just the atmosphere of this place would have seriously harmed or even killed you if I hadn't activated the tailed beast mode." A frown appeared on Naruto's face at this information. This was the dragon's home, and just being in it was enough to kill him in his base form. He would have to be careful maneuvering his way through here. "Apparently I'm in a fight with a dragon god who wants my help in taking back her home from another dragon. So basically, same old stuff." Kurama snorted at how utterly nonchalant the boy was acting about the situation. In all honesty, he shouldn't have been that surprised. This was Naruto he was talking about after all. "Though, this place is beautiful. I can see why she would want to fight for it. Just wish I didn't get dragged into it." The dimensional gap truly was a beautiful place. Countless amounts of vibrant colors danced around the blonde. There seemed to be no end in sight to the beautiful background. "Trouble always seems to find you, no matter where you go. By the way, you may want to get out the way." Naruto looked up and saw the same snake from before shooting towards him. Tired and slightly agitated from his trip, Naruto quickly summoned a Rasengan in his hand before jumping towards the beast. The blonde crossed the distance between the two in a matter of a second as he thrust his arm towards the snake. The spiraling sphere of chakra slammed into the snake's head, stopping it in its track. The creature released a loud scream as the chakra sphere carved its way into its body. Before long, the snake could not keep its form together and was forced to dissipate due to the damage that had been done to it. "Don't think it's over." Naruto twisted his body and yet another snake, this one much larger and quicker, heading towards him. The blonde released a low groan before bracing himself for the impact. The snake slammed headfirst into Naruto's awaiting hands. The boy latched onto the beast's jaw, keeping it shut as the beast attempted to swallow the boy whole. Naruto's own chakra and the strange energy the snake was made up of seemed to be in a sort of power struggle as Naruto continued to restrain the beast. The power struggle quickly turned in Naruto's favor when a shadow clone appeared behind the snake. The clone grabbed onto the snake's tail before pulling on the beast's rear, sending it whipping away from the original and high into the air. The snake released a loud hiss as it was forced airborne. Before the beast could gain control of itself, several clones appeared above it with their legs raised high into the air. In perfect unison, the clones brought their legs down on the snake's body, reversing its full momentum. The reptile was now streaking towards the ground as the full force of several Naruto clones fueled its descent. The snake slammed mercilessly into the earth, cracking and splintering the ground beneath it. The creature let loose a soft hiss as it attempted to crawl its way out of the mini crater it had just made. Its retreat was stopped when several oversized shurikens slammed into its body. The snake's movement became erratic as it tried to squirm its way out from under the weapons. Unfortunately for the snake, it ended up losing the battle as it was forced to disperse due to the damage that had been done to its body. Don't want to alarm you, but there is another snake heading your way. A large scowl appeared on Naruto's face as he looked at the sky and saw Ophis forming another snake from her body. An agitated growl ripped its way through the teen's voice as he saw the creature began to grow larger and larger. I'm tired of these goddamn snakes. Naruto muttered to himself as Six Magenta quickly settled on his body, indicating that he was now in his Six Paths Sage mode. The boy's narrowed yellow eyes were focused on the god. 2 chakra arms materialized out of Naruto's back as the boy's feet slowly lifted from the ground. A massive Rasengan appeared between the 2 chakra arms as Naruto took off flying towards the dragon god. His power it's grown even greater. Ophis thought to herself as she watched the blonde's new form dance around his body. The 2 new arms that had sprouted out of the ninja's body were interesting but nothing too out of the norm, well, at least when it came to Ophis. On the other hand, the giant sphere of chakra was something the dragon would definitely like to avoid. Rasen absorption. Ophis was caught off guard when a new arm came shooting out of Naruto's back and grabbed her by the waist. Before the dragon could react, the chakra arm guided her live form into the giant Rasengan, slamming the small girl into the S-rank jutsu. Ophis had to actually hold in a small grunt of pain as she felt the attack grind into her body. The sphere of chakra had broken through the layers of her skin and were now grinding against pure nerve and muscle. This had been one of the first time the dragon god had ever been injured in her human form. The fact it had been by a human made the surprise even more shocking. Impressive. A brief look of shock crossed Naruto's face when he heard the same monotone voice speak out from above him. The girl should have been screaming and yelling in pain while the Rasengan shredded every layer of her skin, muscle, nerves and bones. Instead, she was just casually remarking on the power of his attack. Get out of there. Kurama's warning came too late as Ophis made her move. The same dark energy from before surrounded the girl's body, causing the Rasengan to destabilize. The injuries that had been inflicted on her only a couple of seconds ago were completely healed in an instant. The sphere of chakra that had just been attacking the girl now dissipated uselessly into the air as Naruto could no longer keep its form. Before the blonde could retreat away from the girl, a large shock wave emitted from the girl. The shock wave slammed into the boy's body, throwing him backwards for hundreds of yards. Naruto's chakra arms were ripped from his body as the force behind the attack ripped through the blonde's body. Naruto's flight came to a rather messy stop when his body impacted against the ground. The shinobi slid for an extra dozen yards as he went tumbling along the ground. He finally came to a stop when his back slammed mercilessly into an old ruin, sending it crumbling to the ground and on top of the blonde. I feel like Guy, Tsunade, and Madara mule kicked me in the chest. Naruto's audible groan could be heard as he pushed the debris off of himself. The boy could feel his bones mending themselves back together from the damage that had been done by the attack. I told you to get out of there. If your warnings could come just a little bit sooner, that would be so much more helpful. Well, here's a new one. There's a massive buildup of energy coming from the girl right now. You better look out. Naruto's head turned towards the girl, eliciting another groan from the boy at what he saw. The dark energy that the girl possessed was now surrounding her body in the ethereal form of a snake. A snake that was close to 100 meters long and had the wings of an European-style dragon. Rows of midnight black scales could be seen faintly glowing along the construct's body. Its eyes were glowing a dark purple as its gaze was settled on Naruto. Kurama, yup. Full synchronization? Yup, glad we're on the same page. Naruto's clapped his hands together as he closed his eyes. In his mindscape, the nine-tailed beast was in a similar position as the two partners began to sync their minds and powers together. Ophis watched from within her construct curiously as the energy around the boy began to fluctuate. The cloak the boy had donned was now changing in size and shape. 2 rabbit ears appeared on Naruto's head as his feet once again left the ground. His chakra cloak continued to grow as the boy flew higher and higher into the air. Synchronization complete. Nine-Tails chakra mode. Tailed beast transformation. Naruto's voice took on a much deeper and guttural tone as Kurama's chakra flowed freely and fully through his body. The untamed power of the strongest tailed beast was now under his control. This form always feels the weirdest. I feel like I have the biggest sugar high in the world, yet my mind is as clear as ever. Naruto muttered to himself while giving his muscles a small flex. Every fiber of his body was currently being pumped with the purified Biju chakra. Less talking, more focus on fighting the giant dragon in front of us. It's time to stretch my limbs. Kurama's voice was an echo in the blonde's mind. This was the tailed beast's favorite form. No limits, no hiding behind a seal, no distractions. Just his partner, and him going all out at their full strength. Right. Naruto stated before slamming his fist together, flaring his chakra to its highest point, while sending a powerful shock wave out from his position. Waves of dust and debris were picked off from the ground and sent into the air by the wave. This power Ophis muttered after she was forced to stabilize herself from the force of the blast. This wasn't anything like what she expected. The power she had originally felt coming from the boy was just the tip of the iceberg. What she was feeling right now completely outshone everything she had felt before. Ophis was snapped out of her musings when she saw an orange flash appear out the corner of her eye. The girl attempted to turn her head, and by extension her construct's body, but was too slow to avoid the massive right hook that slammed into her construct's body. Just because she couldn't see the punch didn't mean she didn't feel it. This hit was much more powerful than Naruto's initial strikes. The punch threw the dragon's construct off balance as it went rocketing down towards the ground. The dragon slammed into the ground, sending dust up into the air as it cracked the ground underneath it. Fox beats snake all the time. Believe it! The happy tone mixed with the boy's rather rough-sounding tone made for a strange combination that would have creeped out most people. Fortunately for Naruto, he only had an audience for one, and that one was currently face first in the ground, or so he thought. Dodge right now! Naruto didn't hesitate at all as he quickly forced his construct's body to the right. Not even a second later, a highly concentrated beam of Ophis energy came blasting by Naruto. Even though he had dodged the blast, the blonde was forced to cover his face by the sheer force of it. Do not get hit by that. Do not! Kurama screamed as a continuous salvo of energy blast coming shooting from Ophis' mouth and towards Naruto. The blonde made good use of his construct's agility as he dodged each of the blasts. She's preparing something big. Get to her before she can let it off. With a single nod, Naruto leapt into action. The blonde sidestepped yet another one of Ophis' breath attacks before taking off towards the girl. Several oversized snakes crawled from out of Ophis' construct as the girl took several steps back. The snakes immediately went slithering towards Naruto as their creator prepared her attack. The snakes leapt towards the dashing Naruto with their jaws ready to bite into the boy and his partner. Without a single word needed to be uttered, one of Construct's tails came shooting forward and pierced the first snake's skull, forcing it to disperse. Another snake tried its hand at attacking the boy. Another one of Naruto's tail came forward and wrapped around the approaching snake. The snake was raised towards the avatar's mouth before the jaw closed down on it, ripping the snake construct apart. The snake let out a strangled hiss as its now bisected body fell to the floor before dispersing into a countless number of much smaller snakes. The final snake didn't even manage to make its move as an impromptu tailed beast bomb slammed into it. Poor snake.